Chapter 468. With the baby tiger around, the dimensional crystals that dropped had pretty good stats. Many of them exceeded 30. Among them was an essence energy skill crystal left behind by a stone warrior. With the fire furnace queen, he grinded his way forward and was blocked by a palace. The stone door of the palace was tightly shut, and on the stone door, Zhou saw the carving on it again. There was a woman's side profile on a shield, but what was different was that the woman's face on the shield was straight. One could tell that it was an extremely beautiful girl. Her eyes were as alluring as the sea. Although it was only a carving, it made one involuntarily take a second look. Just as Zhou took a glance, he felt his ear heat up. The truth listener earring emitted an intense burning sensation. Then, he felt terrifying primordial energy surge into his body, filling his body with primordial energy that was constantly seeping out. Such terrifying essence energy. If not for the truth listener earring, the blood-colored avatar would probably be dead by now, right? Zhou was alarmed. Zhou realized that as long as the blood-colored avatar didn't look at the beauty's eyes on the stone door, truth listener wouldn't react. In other words, the beauty's eyes were the source of the problem. Zhou closed his eyes and relied on truth listener's hearing. The beauty's eyes on the stone door were completely useless. When he arrived in front of the door, Zhou controlled the blood-colored avatar to push open the stone door with all his might, but the stone door didn't budge at all. It was as though it was welded shut. Zhou slashed a few times with the Overlord's sword, but the stone door seemed to be protected by divine power. The Overlord's sword's ever-victorious characteristic failed to leave a mark on the door, much less split it open. Since there's a door, I can definitely enter. But how do I enter? Zhou fumbled around the door, hoping to find the mechanism to open it. When Zhou's hands touched the eyes of the beauty sculpture, he heard a click as though some mechanism had been activated. The door automatically opened and retreated to the left and right. The door opened, revealing the palace inside. It was pitch black without any light. Zhou scanned the palace with truth listener's ability and saw many stone pillars and some braziers. However, as the palace was too big, truth listener's power couldn't reach its depths. However, there were no dimensional creatures or stone statues within its range. Zhou controlled the blood-colored avatar to step into the palace. After the blood-colored avatar stepped into the palace's door automatically closed. The 2 rows of braziers in the palace automatically lit up, extending all the way to the deepest depths of the palace. Zhou looked in and saw a throne. Sitting on the throne was a beautiful girl. Her face was identical to the beauty on the shield. She looked lively as though she had walked out of a painting. However, she was even more charming than the portrait, especially her eyes. Although they were cartoonish, they were full of temptation, making it impossible for people to move their eyes away from her eyes. With just a glance, the blood-colored avatar's body immediately underwent a special change. Its blood-colored body turned into stone, turning into a stone statue. Then, the game screen went black. Dead. Why is the truth listener earring useless? Zhou found it odd. Previously, the truth listener earring was clearly effective, but why was it completely useless after seeing the girl in the palace? Even if the girl was at the mythical stage and the truth listener earring wasn't strong enough to withstand such a powerful force, it wasn't to the point of not reacting at all. This left Zhou puzzled. Since the truth listener earring doesn't react, there's only one possibility. The girl's eyes in the palace aren't the same power as the beauty's eyes on the shield. After some thought, Zhou could only come up with one possibility. This made Zhou even more interested in the girl. He dripped his blood to revive and entered the cursed demon palace again. He stormed all the way to the girls' palaces. After entering, Zhou made the blood-colored avatar keep its eyes closed. He didn't look at the girl at all to prevent himself from being petrified by her gaze. Indeed, this method was feasible. As long as he didn't look at the girl's eyes, he wouldn't be petrified. Could this girl be that creature from the legends? Zhou had specially read the myths of the Peninsula of Gods in the past. When he saw that the girl's gaze had the ability to petrify, he thought of a famous demon in myths, Medusa. In ancient myths, Medusa was a natural demon. Her portrait would be engraved on a shield to ward off evil. There was also a myth that Medusa was a beautiful girl. She tried to compete with the goddess of wisdom with her beauty, but she was beheaded by the goddess of wisdom and embedded on the shield. Modern people generally believed that Medusa had a human head and a snake body. Her hair resembled a venomous snake, but in ancient myths, only Medusa's hair was a venomous snake. She was no different from a human. Zhou didn't know which myth matched a dimensional zone, but if this girl was really Medusa, the possibility of the latter was higher. The girl sat on the throne and watched the blood-colored avatar approach. She didn't move as she sat there quietly. Zhou carefully approached the girl and had already walked to the throne, but he still didn't see the girl move. "Don't tell me she's a fake?" Zhou muttered inwardly. However, the girl in front of him had bright eyes and white teeth. She was indescribably beautiful, especially her beautiful long hair. It had an indescribable charm to it. She didn't look like a fake no matter how he looked at it. The blood-colored avatar had already walked in front of the girl, but she was still sitting there motionless. She only looked at him with her eyes without any intention of speaking. "Don't tell me she's really a fake?" Zhou thought as he extended his finger and pinched the girl's face. It was fleshy and warm. It was clearly not a fake. When Zhou touched the girl, her expression immediately changed. Almost instantly, the girl's beautiful face became as terrifying as a ferocious ghost. Her beautiful hair also turned into venomous snake. In an instant, she turned from a beautiful girl to a terrifying demoness. Behind her, a pair of swan wings appeared. She opened her mouth full of fangs and let out a strange scream at Zhou. Zhou couldn't help but open his eyes to glance at her. The truth listener earring immediately emitted a scorching energy. It was so hot that it almost scalded Zhou's ears. At the same time, large amounts of primordial energy surged into his body. Strange, why is truth listener useful again? Zhou was puzzled, but he didn't have the time to think about it carefully. The demoness head of venomous snakes had already devoured him. Chapter 469. The terrifying venomous snakes were uncountable as they enveloped the entire palace, preventing Zhou from dodging. Zhou drew his sword and slashed at the venomous snake in front of him. However, when the venomous snake in front of him was injured, more venomous snakes surged over and wrapped around the Overlord's sword's blade. Some venomous snakes even bit the Overlord's sword and snapped it. Zhou's heart stirred as he switched to the Ancient Sovereign Sutra and summoned the Defy Ancient Sovereign to fuse with him. At the same time, he used the Demon Dragon True Body. With the augmentation of the powerful Demon Dragon True Body, the blood-colored avatar ignored the venomous snake's bites and charged at Medusa. The venomous snakes only left shallow teeth marks on the Demon Dragon True Body's scales. Although the snake venom had invaded, Zhou's poison resistance was high. With the augmentation of the Demon Dragon True Body, the snake venom couldn't do anything to him. With a grab with both hands, the venomous snakes that were grabbing at him were torn apart. However, he charged at Medusa and threw a punch at her chest. Medusa wasn't to be outdone as she fought Zhou. Her speed was faster than Zhou's, but her strength wasn't as strong as his Demon Dragon True Body. Momentarily, the battle was a draw. Originally, Zhou's Demon Dragon True Body could only last for 10 seconds at most, but Zhou kept looking at Medusa's eyes. The petrifying ability of Medusa's eyes was converted into boundless primordial energy through the Truth Listener earring, replenishing Zhou's primordial energy. This allowed him to use the Demon Dragon True Body for a longer period of time. Medusa's strongest eyes of petrification was useless against Zhou. Her long snake hair was relatively ineffective against Zhou. Momentarily it was a stalemate. Although he had a large amount of primordial energy replenishing him, it wasn't enough for the demon dragon true body to sustain the expenditure. As time went on, the demon dragon true body wouldn't be able to hold on. Furthermore, even if he could hold on, the demon dragon true body wasn't enough to kill Medusa. At most, he could maintain his undefeated state. With a thought, Zhou directly used the primordial energy skill, Transcendent Flying Immortal, in his demon dragon true body state. He released an extremely powerful force in a bid to kill Medusa. Beams of light crisscrossed, leaving wounds on Medusa's body one after another. However, they failed to kill her. Instead, Zhou showed signs of being poisoned when the blood spewed out from Medusa's body splattered. Due to the excessive expenditure of essence energy, the demon dragon true body automatically dissipated as the blood-colored avatar was bitten to death by the venomous snakes that filled the sky. With Truth Listener and the demon dragon true body, I'm a surprising counter to Medusa. I can actually fight Medusa head-on. However, it's still a little difficult to kill her, but the chances are very high. Zhou thought about how he could kill Medusa. Before thinking of a way to kill Medusa, Zhou didn't head to the Cursed Demon Palace again. The drop rate there was too low. Even with the baby tiger's augmentation, nothing good dropped. After resting for a while, Zhou restarted the game and went to Music Temple. After entering the Music Temple, Zhou immediately saw a musical note with wings flying in the air. It looked strange and magical. As the musical notes flew, they also emitted strange sound waves, releasing an offensive ability similar to Sound Wave. However, a legendary Sound Wave attack was naturally useless against Zhou. He shattered the musical note with a single strike. Killed legendary creature, musical note sprite. Discovered dimensional crystal. Zhou saw a dimensional crystal drop, but it was only a speed 14 crystal. He couldn't be bothered to pick it up as he continued walking into the music temple with the baby tiger. Inside the music temple, musical note sprites would fly out from time to time. Although they looked similar with wings growing on them, there were still some subtle differences. Furthermore, their sound wave attacks were somewhat different, but they were useless against Zhou. After grinding for a while, quite a number of dimensional crystals dropped. There were even essence energy skill crystals. However, these musical note sprites were at the legendary stage, so they weren't of much use to Zhou. "My dear friend, you are about to be free," Lucas called and said excitedly. "What happened?" Zhou was already used to Lucas's brainless manner of speaking. "The thief who stole the invisibility cloak companion egg has been found. The ban will soon be lifted," Lucas said. "Found? Who is it?" Zhou asked in surprise. He thought to himself that the local wealthy families on the Peninsula of Gods were really efficient. They had actually found the person so quickly. "I don't know yet, but he has already been trapped in the newly discovered Goddess of Wisdom Temple. He shouldn't be able to escape. I believe we will capture him soon," Lucas said. Zhou was slightly taken aback as he thought to himself, "Isn't the newly discovered Goddess of Wisdom Temple the Cursed Demon Palace? Have you sent someone in?" Zhou asked. "They've entered, but they encountered some trouble. Only one of the experts who entered came out. Now, Lord Irjar is gathering manpower. He will definitely be able to capture that person in the next few days," Lucas said. "Do you know what problem they encountered?" Zhou had already guessed something. It was likely that they had been struck in front of the stone door. "I can't be sure yet." According to the epic expert who returned, he saw the epic experts turn into stone statues from afar. "He doesn't know what happened," Lucas briefly explained. As expected. After Zhou heard that, he knew that something had indeed happened to those people in front of the stone door. They had been turned into stone statues by the Medusa statue on the stone door. However, things didn't develop as smoothly as Lucas had predicted. After a few days, the ban still hadn't been lifted. Zhou and Ananxing could only stay on the Peninsula of Gods. According to Lucas, Irjar had sent many experts in, but more than half of them died. They still failed to capture the person from the East District. Now, they were beginning to suspect that it wasn't the temple of the goddess of wisdom, but the palace of the demoness, Medusa. This was because many epic experts had been petrified in front of the door. "There's something fishy about this," Anxing said with a frown. "What's fishy?" Zhouwen asked. "The Peninsula of Gods is someone else's territory after all. A person from the East District can actually cause such a huge stir. Irjar sent so many epic experts in, but they failed to capture him. This itself is very problematic." After a pause, Anxing said, "I think there are two possibilities. One is that the person has already incubated the invisibility cloak, allowing him to survive such a pursuit." "What's the other possibility?" Zhouwen asked. "The other possibility is interesting. Perhaps someone is behind this and wants to use the invisibility cloak to do something to the wealthy families on the Peninsula of Gods," Anxing said with a faint smile. Chapter 470. Knock, knock, knock. Someone suddenly knocked on the door. It was very loud. Zhouwen and Anxing found it odd. The room had a doorbell, so why didn't they press the doorbell but knock on the door? When they opened the door, they saw that it was Lucas. "My good friend, our luck has come this time." Lucas didn't stand on ceremony at all. He directly entered the door and sat on the sofa. He poured himself a cup of water and drank it in one gulp before speaking to Zhouwen and Anxing. "Could it be that the thief has been caught?" Zhouwen asked. "If he's been caught, what luck do we have? No one has been able to catch the thief yet. They haven't even found him. Lord Irjar suspects that he has entered the palace to hide, but no one can open the palace door. Therefore, Lord Irjar has issued a bounty mission. Anyone who can open the palace door will receive a huge bounty." Lucas looked at Zhouwen and Anxing and asked in anticipation, "How about it? Shall we team up to open the palace door?" Zhouwen found it odd when he heard that. The palace door wasn't difficult to open. As long as one closed their eyes and walked to the door, they wouldn't look at the beauty's eyes. Then, they would use both hands to press on the beauty's eyes. It was unbelievable that no one could open such a simple door. In fact, Zhouwen was wrong. It wasn't difficult to avoid being petrified. This was because the beauty on the door would only be petrified when one looked at her eyes. It was unlike Medusa in the palace. Even if one didn't look at her eyes, they would still be petrified as long as they were seen by her. However, even if they weren't petrified, everyone now knew that the owner of the palace was likely Medusa. Who would dare touch Medusa's eyes? Therefore, the matter was stuck here. No one could open the palace door. Can't the great Lucas do such a trivial matter as opening the palace door alone? Why do you need us? Anxing joked. However, Lucas didn't blush as he said with a smile, "A great hero also needs companions. Just like the 6 League heroes, it was the 6 heroes who worked together to create a legend of the League. I think we can form a hero team and open the palace door together. We can leave behind a legend. What do you think?" "How much is Irjar offering?" Zhouwen asked. 10 epic companion eggs. Furthermore, they are all products of Pluto Temple. Those are all good stuff. Ordinary people can't enter Pluto Temple at all. Also, there's a permanent pass to the Peninsula of Gods. It allows you to enter the public dimensional zones of the Peninsula of Gods permanently. This is a reward for foreign independent hunters, Lucas said. That sounds good. What kind of epic companion eggs drop from Pluto King Hall? Zhouwen was somewhat interested. They are all underworld creatures' companion eggs. There are many types, and they can't be bought on the market. Pluto Temple is Lord Irjar's family's private property. Outsiders aren't allowed to enter. Lucas didn't seem to know much about it either. What do you think? Think about it. The 3 of us will go together. The companion eggs will be split equally. The pass will be yours, Lucas continued persuading. Sure, but I have another condition, Zhouwen said after some thought. What conditions? Lucas asked in puzzlement. I want to go to Pluto Temple to take a look. I just need one chance. Zhouwen wanted to go to Pluto Temple to see if there was a tiny palm symbol. Zhouwen had heard of Pluto Temple on the Peninsula of Gods. Legend had it that it was the territory of Pluto King. There were many dimensional creatures of the underworld inside, and they were very different from ordinary dimensional creatures. Can't you change the conditions? For example, adding 2 more companion eggs? Lucas said with some difficulty. No, Zhouwen answered with certainty. Then I'll talk to Lord Irjar. By the way, how much do you know about the palace? Are you confident in opening the door? Although Lucas felt that Zhouwen and Ansheng were very strong and that he might have a chance of opening the door with them, he didn't have absolute confidence. He only wanted to try his luck. However, if he couldn't open the door after discussing the conditions, it would be too embarrassing. I heard that it should be Medusa's palace, right? If that's the case, I might have a way to open the door, Zhouwen said. How confident are you? Lucas asked. If it's Medusa's palace, I'm about 90% confident, Zhouwen answered. Lucas was overjoyed when he heard that. He patted his chest and said, If that's the case, wait for my good news. I'll definitely be able to convince Lord Irjar. After Lucas left, Ansheng asked Zhouwen, Are you really confident in opening the door to the palace? We haven't recovered from our injuries, so it's not suitable for us to do anything too risky. As you know, I have a companion beast that can withstand the power of curses. Medusa's eyes of petrification is actually a kind of curse power. It's useless against me. If it's just opening the door, there's no need to take any risks, Zhouwen explained. That's good. However, you still have to be careful. You can't be careless just because you have a companion beast protecting you. There are too many strange powers in this world. No companion egg is absolutely invincible, even mythical companion beasts, Ansheng said seriously. Zhouwen knew that Ansheng was afraid that he would suffer because of his carelessness. He nodded and said, Don't worry. I know what I'm doing. He wasn't exaggerating at all. He knew the cursed demon palace like the back of his hand. As long as he didn't enter Medusa's palace, he wouldn't be in any danger. Lucas rushed to Irjar's house. Irjar happened to be receiving a guest. Henry, let me introduce you. This is the #1 freelance hunter of the Peninsula of Gods, Lucas. Irjar pointed at the man sitting on the sofa and introduced him to Lucas. Lucas, this is Henry from the Cape family. He's a famous freelance hunter and has the reputation of Spear Emperor. Nice to meet you. I'm the #1 freelance hunter of the Peninsula of Gods, Lucas said as he extended his hand. Henry sat on the sofa, but he had no intention of extending his hand. He didn't even move. He glanced at Lucas and said contemptuously, Freelance hunter of the Peninsula of Gods, the great Lucas. I've heard of this name before. With that said, Henry looked at Irjar and said, Since you have the help of such a great freelance hunter, why did you come to me? Can't you just get this great Lucas to help you open the door to the palace? Irjar coughed lightly and said, Lucas is good at head-on combat. Dealing with such evil powers isn't his forte. Therefore, we need your help to open the door to the palace. Of course I can help, but I have a condition, Henry said as he smiled faintly at Lucas, who had retracted his palm in embarrassment. Chapter 471. Why are you looking at me? Lucas found it odd. I've seen your recent updates. You have a good relationship with Zhouwen, right? Henry said. So what? Lucas frowned slightly. It's very simple. Hold this first. Henry handed a bottle to Henry. When Lucas took the bottle from Henry, he felt his fingers itch. He raised his hand and saw a red dot on his finger, as though he had been bitten by a bug. Lucas thought nothing of it as he held the bottle and asked, What's this? It's filled with water. All you need to do is pour the water in the bottle into the water Zhouwen is drinking and let him drink it, Henry said. Then, I can help you open the door to the palace for free. Impossible. I won't help you do those dirty things. Lucas placed the bottle heavily on the table and turned to Irjar. Lord Irjar, there's no need for their help. I've already found Zhou and company to go to the palace with me. I guarantee that I can open the door to the palace. Irjar was somewhat hesitant as Lucas continued, Lord, please believe me. I'll definitely be able to open the door to the palace and help you capture that thief. Irjar looked at Lucas before looking at Henry. Finally, he said to Henry, Your Excellency, if you're willing to help, my previous promises are still valid. Henry sat on the sofa and didn't answer Irjar. He picked up the bottle of water that Lucas had placed on the table and said to Lucas, I believe you will agree, right? Of course not. Who do you think the great Lucas is? Lucas said angrily. Is that so? Henry looked at Lucas, but the look in his eyes became increasingly odd. Something seemed to be shaking in his eyes as his pupils became very strange. It was as though there was a mosquito or bug trapped in a glass ball. Lucas immediately felt as though countless bugs were gnawing at his bones. The pain made his face turn pale as beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Despicable fellow, you! What did you do to me? Lucas nearly fainted from the pain as he glared at Henry. Henry, how dare you attack my people in my territory? Irjar's face turned cold as he stared at Henry. However, Henry had an indifferent expression. He placed the bottle in front of Lucas and said indifferently, Do as I say. Otherwise, you won't die. However, this pain will continue until you die. If you don't believe me, you can find someone to try and see if they can relieve your pain. After that, Henry got up and bowed slightly to Irjar. Dear Mr. Irjar, I believe I will be able to serve you soon. I look forward to our next meeting. If I were you, I would immediately relieve Lucas of the pain. Irjar waved his hand and immediately, a few epic experts surrounded him. Mr. Irjar, I hope you can consider it carefully. Zhou is an enemy of our Cape family. Do you want to be enemies with our Cape family as well? With that said, Henry strode away, ignoring the epic experts. Irjar gritted his teeth and didn't give the order to attack Henry. Lucas, you know how powerful the Cape family is. They are the uncrowned kings of the West District. We still don't have the ability to fight them. You. After Henry left, Irjar said helplessly to Lucas as he looked at the small bottle of water. Lucas wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and reached out to grab the small bottle. Zhou, An and Xing waited for Lucas's news in the hotel. Before long, Lucas rushed back. Lucas, how did the negotiation go? Zhou asked. I've been rushing all the way back. I'm dying of thirst. Let me drink some water first. As Lucas spoke, he sat on the sofa in the living room. He picked up the teapot and poured himself a cup of water. After finishing it in one gulp, he filled it up for himself and poured a cup for Zhou, An and Xing. I didn't manage to negotiate with the Pluto Hall Pass, Lucas said as he held his teacup. Is the Pluto Hall Pass that precious? Can't outsiders even take a look? Zhou said in surprise. Although I didn't manage to negotiate the Pluto Hall Pass, I've already discussed it with Lord Irjar. You can leave the Peninsula of Gods in advance. Pack up and follow me to the airport later, Lucas said. Thank you so much, Lucas. However, we still want to stay here for a period of time. We have no intention of leaving for the time being, Zhou said as he drank a mouthful of water. Seeing Zhou drink the water, Lucas heaved a sigh of relief and said, Since you don't plan on leaving, can you consider it again? Come with me to open the door to the palace. The bounty I mentioned previously will be yours. I don't want anything. Just treat it as helping me. All right, let's do as we agreed. The companion eggs will be split equally. The passes will be ours. Zhou nodded. Since he couldn't obtain the Pluto Hall Pass, he could accept a few Pluto Hall companion eggs and passes to the other temples. Of course, Zhou main goal was to hope that Earjar and company could find the thief. Otherwise, they wouldn't have a chance to fish in troubled waters. Haha, I knew it. Lucas's friends are all good friends. Lucas wrapped his muscular arm around Zhou neck and laughed loudly. Lucas quickly led Zhou and Ensheng to the cursed demon palace. It had already been sealed by Earjar's men. Without his orders, no one was allowed to enter or leave. Lucas was naturally an exception. After showing his identification, he brought Zhou and Ensheng into the cursed demon palace. Because many people had rushed into the cursed demon palace to search for traces of the thief, most of the stone statue creatures in front of them had already been cleared. Zhou and company didn't encounter any dimensional creatures when they were about to approach the palace's entrance. The palace's entrance is up ahead. Where this. Otherwise, even if you accidentally see the girl's eyes on the door, you will be petrified. Lucas took out 3 pairs of eye masks and gave 2 to Zhou and Ensheng. He wore one himself. Zhou and Ensheng put on their eye masks before continuing forward. Zhou had truth listener's ability, so it wasn't a problem even if he couldn't see. Ensheng was about the same. Wearing the eye mask didn't seem like he was wearing it. He was rather agile. Only Lucas seemed to become a little clumsy after wearing the eye mask. His steps became a little sluggish. Zhou didn't rush him. He slowly walked to the palace's entrance and pretended to fumble around the door a few times. At the same time, he pressed the girl's eyes with both hands. The palace door automatically slid open and the door immediately opened. It's open. You can take off the eye mask, Zhou said. Lucas took off the eye mask and indeed, he realized that the stone door was gone. He was immediately overjoyed. He took out his phone and stood in front of the door to take a photo with Zhou and company before uploading it online. The great Lucas and his friends have opened the mysterious and terrifying palace door together. Chapter 472. After leaving the cursed demon palace, Lucas said while riding his Tyrannosaurus Rex, "Go back to the hotel first. I'm going to Lord Earjar to claim the bounty. I'll send it to you later." Just as Zhou and Ensheng were about to leave, Lucas said, "The Peninsula of Gods hasn't been peaceful recently. Don't eat or drink anything. You have to check it carefully." "Got it." Zhou smiled and waved his hand before leaving with Ensheng. Lucas rode the Tyrannosaurus Rex as he ran on the street. Many young people would cheer and wave at him when they saw him. Lucas also responded enthusiastically. After leaving the city, Lucas's expression darkened. He rode the Tyrannosaurus Rex and quickly arrived at a manor belonging to the traffic police. "Tell Henry that I've already done what he wants me to do," Lucas said to the gatekeeper. "Please come in. Lord Henry is waiting for you," the gatekeeper said with a smile, as though he had already known that Lucas would come. Lucas followed the person into the manor and soon saw Henry. Henry was sitting in front of the pool, basking in the sun. He held an exquisite antique gun in his hand and kept wiping it with a cloth. "Henry, I've already done what you asked me to do. Please remove the restrictions on me immediately." Lucas took out the small bottle and placed it on the table in front of Henry. The water-like liquid inside had already disappeared. Henry glanced at the bottle on the table and suddenly picked up the antique gun in his hand. He aimed it at Lucas and pulled the trigger. Lucas's reaction wasn't slow either. He used his shield to block his body, but the bullet was very strange. It actually made a turn and circled around the shield. It passed through the gap in his armor and shot into his muscles. Strangely, the bullet wasn't made of metal, but grayish-white bone. After it drilled into his muscles, many tiny blood vessels appeared on the bone bullet. They connected to Lucas's muscles and blood vessels, as though they were parasitic in his muscles. Ah! Lucas only felt intense pain in his upper body. Furthermore, he felt numb. He knelt on one leg and pressed his hands against the ground to prevent himself from falling to the ground. Henry looked at Lucas coldly and said disdainfully, "Do you think I'm as stupid as you? Do you think I won't know just because you threw it away? Since you're so great and willing to sacrifice for your friends, I'll fulfill your wish. Despicable person. How could the great Lucas betray his friends? You found the wrong person. Lucas suddenly stood up and slashed at Henry with his axe in both hands. Pitiful and ignorant fellow. Do you think that just because those brats call you the great Lucas, you are really some big shot? That's just the arrogance of the ignorant. In the eyes of the truly strong, you're just a lowly bug that can be poked to death with a single finger. Harry sat there without moving an inch. However, Lucas felt as though his heart was about to stop beating. His body couldn't take another step forward. He maintained the posture of the axe cleaving down and stopped there. You were first hit by my bone-eating bug and now you've been hit by my parasitic bullet. Yet you still want to fight me. How foolish. Lucas looked at the frozen Lucas and continued, the bone-eating bug will constantly gnaw at your bones until there's not a single bone left. When that happens, all that'll be left will be a pile of flesh and blood, like a pile of rotten meat. The great Lucas, when you kneel down and beg for mercy while weeping, wanting me to grant you death, an ignorant and pitiful bug like you will know what true greatness is. The great Lucas will never submit to anyone. Lucas's body trembled as his veins protruded. It was as though he wanted to move his body. However, he couldn't move his body no matter what. All his bones felt a heart-wrenching pain, as though thousands of bugs were gnawing at his bones. Blood began to seep out of Lucas's eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. Only an ignorant bug like you dares to call yourself great. I'm afraid you haven't seen what true strength is. The #1 freelance hunter on the Peninsula of Gods? This title itself is a form of mockery. To think that you really think so highly of yourself. There are many experts on the Peninsula of Gods. Since when is it your turn? Henry said contemptuously. I'm the #1 freelance hunter on the Peninsula of Gods. I'm the great Lucas, Lucas said through gritted teeth as his body trembled violently. Arrogant and foolish fellow, Henry said with a twitch of his lips. I'm the great Lucas. I'm the #1 hunter on the Peninsula of Gods. I'm the irreplaceable Lucas. Lucas's 7 orifices were bleeding, but his eyes were filled with determination. The boring arrogance of a lowly person. Before Henry could finish his sentence, his expression suddenly changed. I'm the great Lucas. With Lucas's roar, a terrifying power erupted from his body. Golden light erupted from his body like a golden god's shadow that enveloped his body. In the next second, the parasitic bullet that bound Lucas's body exploded and was forcefully squeezed out by his muscles. The vein-like meridians were completely severed. His powerful hands held the gigantic axe as he slashed down with resplendent golden divine light. Boom! The huge manor was split into two by the divine light that erupted from the gigantic axe, creating a huge ravine. Henry stood sideways at the edge of the ravine. The armor on his chest seemed to have been sliced off, revealing the muscles on his chest. There were also scratches and bloodstains on them. Henry's face was extremely pale, and there was still a look of horror on his face. The tip of his nose had been sliced off, and it was bleeding profusely. If he hadn't been careful or reacted quickly enough, he would probably have died under the terrifying golden divine light if he had been struck head-on. In front of the great Lucas, you are just an escaping worm. The golden divine light on Lucas's body dissipated, and the godlike light vanished as well. The gigantic axe landed on the ground. He held the axe's hilt with both hands, barely managing to keep his body from collapsing. However, his eyes were filled with contempt as he looked at Henry. As he spoke, he even took out his cell phone and took a selfie. Looking at the photo, he muttered to himself, as expected of the great Lucas. He's so handsome and charming even when he's exterminating worms. Chop off this bastard's limbs. I want him to lie in front of me like a worm. Henry was infuriated by Lucas's gaze. The person he viewed as a worm actually dared to look at him with such a gaze. It was the greatest insult to him. The few epic experts beside Henry immediately surrounded him. However, they were all very careful, not daring to charge at Lucas immediately. After all, Lucas's strike was too terrifying. The ravine that had split the manor into two was still there. It was a shocking sight. "What are you afraid of? Can't you tell that he no longer has any strength?" Henry said angrily. "No, he does." A voice came from outside the manor. Chapter 473. Why are you here? Lucas turned his head and saw that it was Zhou and Ansheng. "As your strength, how can we not come? Wouldn't he be right?" Ansheng said with a smile, but his eyes were a little cold. In fact, Ansheng and Zhou could tell that something was amiss when Lucas went to look for them today. However, he didn't say anything. The two of them had only been silently observing and didn't say anything. In the end, they secretly followed him here, but they never expected to see such a thing. When Henry saw the two of them, he said with a sneer, "Zhou, you came at the right time. It's time to settle the score with Liz and John. And you, Ansheng, right? You were the one who crippled Liz's sea of energy, right?" "It was me," Ansheng said frankly. "From the looks of it, crippling her sea of energy is letting her off too lightly. She should be killed." "Is that so? That's really unfortunate. I'm afraid you won't have the chance to touch a single strand of hair on the Cape family in the future." As Henry spoke, he raised the antique gun in his hand and aimed it at Zhou. He continued, "If I were you, I would stop immediately. Otherwise, the bone-eating worm in Lucas's body will go berserk with my gunshot and instantly devour all his bones. You are his friends, and he has sacrificed so much for you. You don't want to see him die in such pain, right?" Lucas is right. You really are a dirty worm. Zhou didn't stop as he continued walking towards Henry. He held the hilt of the bamboo blade as killing intent flashed in his eyes. "I told you to stop. Didn't you hear me? Do you want to see him die?" Henry pulled the trigger and shouted at Zhou. "The bone-eating worm is your companion beast, right? If you die, your companion beast will naturally die as well. The threat of Lucas will naturally cease to exist. I'm about 35 meters away from you. Before your gun fires, I will behead you. If you don't believe me, you can try shooting. However, if I were you, I would immediately retract the bone-eating worm. This is because I'm not someone who likes to kill. Don't give me a reason to draw my saber," Zhou said as he continued walking towards Henry. Henry seemed to have heard an extremely ridiculous joke and said with a smile, "If the person who said this was in Tianzua, I would do as he said." "Do you really think that just because your father married in Tianzua's mother, you're really in Tianzua's younger brother? Even if you're in Tianzua's younger brother, as long as Tianzua himself isn't here, you have no right to say that to me." As he spoke, Henry pulled the trigger hard. His slender and powerful fingers grasped the hilt of the saber and drew it out smoothly. The saber beam appeared at an unbelievable speed. Everyone felt their vision blur as Zhou and his saber seemed to vanish. By the time they saw Zhou again, he was already behind Harry. In his hand was a thin saber that was as clear as a mirror. The tip of the saber was pointed diagonally to the ground as a drop of blood slowly flowed down the blade before dripping to the ground. The moment the blood dripped onto the ground, there was a crack, and the antique spear in Henry's hand split into two from the middle. Then, Henry's body was also split into two. Even his face that was filled with fear and disbelief was split into two. Lord Henry, the epic expert who had followed Henry here, was stunned. When they were at the Cape family, they only knew that Zhou was protected by the infamily. He was just a student that was protected by the infamily. However, this student had slain Henry with one strike. Even in the Cape family, which was filled with experts, Henry could be considered a top-notch expert. Such a person couldn't even block a single strike from Zhou. It left them horrified as they lost all their fighting spirit. By the time they reacted, all of them turned to flee. And Xing appeared like a ghost. The dagger-like knife in his hand flickered. In just a moment, he killed all the epic experts as though he was slicing vegetables. After wiping the blood on the dagger, Xing said nonchalantly, "Leave first. Leave this to me." "That's not good, right?" Lucas snapped out of his shock and looked at Xing with a strange look. "Leave it to him. He's more professional than us." Zhou pulled Lucas out. "Lucas, that axe of yours was really powerful. How did you do it?" Zhou and Lucas rode the Tyrannosaurus Rex to the city and were somewhat curious. The strength that Lucas used when he slashed out far exceeded his usual strength. The difference was like night and day. When Lucas heard Zhou praise him, he immediately became happy. He said smugly, "The great Lucas isn't just for show. My life providence is hero of glory. My life soul is the god of combat who believes in me. When I fight for glory and faith, I can unleash unparalleled strength." As Zhou listened, his expression turned odd. Although Lucas made himself sound very strong, and his life providence and life soul were indeed very strong, his strength was very strange. It could be said that most of the time, his life providence and life soul were useless. This was because his life providence and life soul were destined that he couldn't fight for himself. Most of the time, he could only activate the hero of glory life providence when fighting for others. Furthermore, Lucas's faith had to be firm. The more he believed in himself, the stronger his life soul would be. If he had a guilty conscience and did something that violated the hero's glory, his life providence would be useless. Furthermore, because of his guilt, the god of combat he believed in would become very weak. However, there was one situation where Lucas could become extremely strong. If many people acknowledged and worshipped him from the bottom of their hearts, his life soul would become extremely powerful. What a strange life providence and life soul, Zhou thought to himself. By the way, don't put the photo you took online. Don't mention this matter again in the future. Just pretend that you never saw Henry, Zhou said as he took out his phone to take a look. As Zhou spoke, he took out his phone to take a look. He saw that the dead man tree didn't react at all. It didn't appear and absorb Henry's corpse like before. "Of course, I'm not a fool," Lucas said as he took out his phone and deleted the photo he had taken. The Cape family was the uncrowned king of the West District. Although Lucas was famous on the Peninsula of Gods, he was still far from being able to fight them. If he were to be entangled with them, he would probably be in big trouble. Just as he deleted the photo, Lucas's phone suddenly rang. After Lucas picked it up, his expression immediately turned ugly. He couldn't help but exclaim, "What? Medusa in the palace has broken out of the seal. How did this happen?" Zhouwen's expression changed when he heard Lucas's words. He knew very well how terrifying Medusa was. If Medusa really broke out of the seal, this city, or even the entire Peninsula of Gods, would become a human fiend. Chapter 474. Sorry, I have to return immediately. Let's talk again if there's a chance in the future, Lucas said to Zhou. Let's go take a look together. Zhou felt that this matter was somewhat odd. Medusa was in the palace, and if someone entered the palace and touched her, she would turn into a banshee and attack humans. However, after entering the palace, the door would automatically close. Medusa shouldn't have run out of the palace. At the very least, she had never run out in-game. Could it be the work of that bandit? Zhou felt that something was amiss no matter how he thought about it. Perhaps it had something to do with that bandit. All right. Lucas didn't stand on ceremony with Zhou as he urged the Tyrannosaurus Rex to run towards the city at full speed. Before he reached the city, he saw a crowd fleeing towards him. Many people saw Lucas and asked him for help. Lord Lucas, a dimensional creature is destroying the city. Quickly go take a look. After Lucas asked for directions, he immediately rode the Tyrannosaurus Rex and ran against the flow of people. Not long after entering the city, he saw that the usually bustling streets were empty. However, there were many stone statues. There were elderly, children, and some animals. They maintained all sorts of postures. Some were running for their lives in fear, while others were falling to the ground. There was also a puppy that was peeing at a telephone pole, but it had turned into stone. Many buildings were also destroyed and on fire. The city seemed to have turned into a ghost town. When Zhou saw the stone statues, he knew that they were Medusa's handiwork. They were different from the stone statues on the door. Even if he didn't look at her eyes, as long as he was seen by Medusa's eyes of petrification, he would still be petrified. Lucas's expression changed drastically. Among the people who had been petrified, there were clearly people he knew. A helicopter flew past in the sky, and Lucas hurriedly chased after it. After turning 2 streets, he saw a young woman running ahead. Lucas chased after her and shouted, "Barbara, what are you doing there?" The young woman turned her head and was immediately overjoyed when she saw Lucas. "Lord Lucas, quickly go and take a look. Medusa is destroying the entire city. Other than you, no one can save this city." "Where is she? What happened? Why would Medusa run out of the palace?" Lucas asked. "I don't know either. After you sent the news, Lord Irjar sent people into the palace, but not long after, Medusa ran out of the palace. All the people and creatures that her eyes saw turned into stone statues. Even companion beasts were no exception. Because I had a special companion beast protecting me, I wasn't petrified and escaped the calamity," Barbara said. "Where is she?" Lucas asked. "She's over there. I'll take you there, but you'd better not ride the Tyrannosaurus Rex. She'll petrify you if she sees you," Barbara said, pointing at the Tyrannosaurus Rex. "All right." Lucas put away the Tyrannosaurus. With a shield in one hand and a huge axe in the other, he ran in the direction Barbara had pointed. Barbara followed as well, but when she saw that Zhou was also running over, she said to him, "Why are you following? Aren't you afraid of being petrified by Medusa? Why aren't you escaping to the underground air raid shelter?" "I'll follow and see if I can help." Zhou wasn't afraid of Medusa. Truth Listener could perfectly restrain Medusa's eyes of petrification, and the demon dragon Truebody could barely match Medusa. Although he couldn't kill Medusa, he didn't have to be afraid of her. Seeing that Zhou had already run over, Barbara didn't say anything else. However, she didn't think much of it. Zhou looked like a student and was even younger than her. How could he be of any help? If Medusa really saw him, he would probably be petrified immediately. After running for a short while, he heard an explosion coming from the street next door. He also saw a few helicopters shooting at the ground in the sky. Lucas climbed up a building. Zhou and Barbara climbed up as well. After reaching the top of the building, they ran to the other side and looked down. They saw a 3 to 4 meter tall demoness with hair that resembled venomous snake. She was standing on top of a 3-story building. The venomous snake hair on her head seemed to be able to extend infinitely. It flew into the air and wrapped around a helicopter, shattering it into pieces. An epic expert rode an eagle and tore through the air. He held a spear in his hand and wanted to attack Medusa in midair. However, Medusa only turned her head to glance at him. The epic expert and the eagle companion beast were petrified and fell from the sky, shattering into pieces. A cannonball exploded from afar. When the cannonball exploded, essence gold fragments splattered, but they didn't deal any damage to Medusa. In a nearby building, someone was constantly shooting Medusa with essence gold bullet. Many people were also using companion beasts to attack her. However, it was useless. Medusa swept her gaze and all the companion beasts she saw turned into stone statues. The dancing venomous snake hair drilled into the building and bit the soldiers and policemen to death. Any human bitten by the snake hair would instantly turn into a pool of blood. The snake-like hair wrapped around the tanks and flung them into the sky. When they fell, the nearby buildings collapsed. The terrifying Medusa wreaked havoc in the city, but no one could stop her. Humans were vulnerable in front of her. Even epic experts only dared to control their companion beasts to attack her from afar. They didn't dare be seen by her. Boom! A nearby building collapsed with a loud bang. Many humans who had been hiding inside ran out in horror, crying and screaming. Medusa looked over and immediately, groups of humans were petrified. Their faces were filled with all sorts of horrified expressions. Bam! The shattered floorboards fell down, instantly smashing the petrified humans into pieces. Damn it! Lucas grabbed his axe and wanted to jump towards a shorter building beside him. Where are you going? Joanne pulled him back and asked. I'm going to run behind her and chop off her head like the legendary prince, Lucas said. You don't have the prince's diamond sword, hat of invisibility, and shoes of flying. Do you think you can succeed? Joanne had also heard of the myth that Lucas had mentioned. With the help of the goddess of wisdom, he had taken several divine artifacts to secretly behead Medusa. It would be a wonder if he could chop off Medusa's head with a crappy axe. Where there is a will, there is a way. Someone has to do it. The great Lucas can do it. As Lucas spoke, he ran out and jumped onto the roof of a nearby building. Then, he crouched forward to prevent Medusa from discovering him. He continued moving towards another building and constantly approached Medusa. Chapter 475. Joanne frowned slightly. Although what Lucas said made sense, he knew very well how powerful Medusa was. Even if Lucas could unleash the same power as he did in the manor, it would probably be difficult for him to injure Medusa. However, under such circumstances, even if Joanne persuaded Lucas, he definitely wouldn't listen to him. Even if he knew that it was death, he would definitely do it. Little sister, you said that you have a companion beast that can withstand Medusa's eyes of petrification, right? Is that really the case? Joanne asked Barbara. You're just a kid. Who are you calling little sister? I'm older than you, all right? Barbara glared at Joanne. All right then. Missy, you said that a companion beast can withstand Medusa's eyes of petrification, right? Joanne asked her. So what if I am? Don't get any nefarious ideas, Barbara said as she looked at Joanne warily. Joanne pointed in Lucas's direction. It's too dangerous for Lucas to fight Medusa. Why don't you lend him your companion beast? Do you think I don't want to? However, my companion beast is a piece of clothing. It's only useful when I wear it. The clothes transformed from a companion beast can't be worn by others. How can I help him? Barbara said. Clothes? Invisibility cloak? Joanne asked in surprise. Unless it was an invisibility cloak that Medusa couldn't see, Joanne didn't know what other clothes could prevent him from being petrified by the eyes of petrification. What are you thinking? How can I have an invisibility cloak? My companion beast is a sunshade cloak. It doesn't have any invisibility functions, Barbara said as she pointed at the cloak-like clothes on her body. It's this companion beast that can withstand Medusa's eyes of petrification? Joanne sized up Barbara's clothes. The clothes were very loose, like a cloak. It wrapped around Barbara's entire body. It looked silver on the outside and was very eye-catching. It didn't look like it had any invisibility abilities. That's right. I'm very sure that it can withstand Medusa's eyes of petrification. Back then, when Medusa looked over, many people around me were petrified. Only I escaped unscathed, Barbara said. What companion beast is your sunshielding cloak? What's its use? Joanne asked. The sunshade cloak was obtained after I killed a legendary dimensional creature I encountered at the beach. Its name is Silverleaf Shell, and its companion form is the sunshade cloak. It has a certain level of defense, but it's not strong. It's mainly fireproof. After wearing it, even the flames of the fire sprites can't injure me in the metalwork temple. Just fire-resistant clothes? Furthermore, it's a low-level legendary companion beast. It can actually withstand Medusa's eyes of petrification? The more Zhou heard, the more incredulous he found it. There were too many armors with fire-resistant properties, but none of them could defend against Medusa's eyes of petrification. It's up to you whether you believe me or not. Anyway, I'm telling the truth, Barbara said angrily when she saw that Zhou didn't believe her. Sunshade. Fire protection. Wait. Could it be because of this? Zhou suddenly had an idea as he thought of a possibility. According to what Zhou knew, snakes didn't have good vision. It could be said that they were extremely nearsighted. As for some snakes, they had infrared pyrogen detection organs that could sense the body temperature of living creatures to track their prey. Medusa wasn't a snake, but if she was a snake and her eyes of petrification also had infrared pyrogen detection functions, it could explain many things. For example, why her eyes of petrification could only petrify creatures and not inanimate objects like buildings. Another example was why Barbara's sunshade cloak could withstand Medusa's eyes of petrification. It was because not only was the sunshade cloak fireproof, but it also blocked Barbara's body temperature from spreading. Therefore, Medusa couldn't see her and naturally couldn't petrify her. Of course, it was impossible for the eyes of petrification to be as simple as detecting body temperature. It was likely of a higher level, so even companion beasts could be petrified. However, by analogy, he could roughly figure out the main purpose of the eyes of petrification and think of a way to crack it. Although Zhou wasn't afraid of the eyes of petrification, Lucas didn't have such an ability. When he thought of Lucas, he saw that he had already run to the bottom of the 3-story building where Medusa was standing. He peeked his head out to check the situation as though he wanted to rush up. This fool. Don't tell me he really wants to fight Medusa head-on? Just as Zhou was thinking about it, he saw Lucas leap up with a huge axe in hand. With a terrifying golden divine light, he cleaved at Medusa's neck from behind without any hesitation. Lord Lucas, all the best! Barbara waved her fists excitedly as she cheered for Lucas. It was obvious that Lucas held a very high position in her heart. Zhou was also somewhat surprised by Lucas's strength. He had clearly expended his primordial energy not long ago, but now, he could produce a strike that wasn't inferior to the one in the manor. It was indeed surprising. Could it be that the saying, "idiots aren't afraid of fatigue," is true? Zhou thought to himself. It wasn't a bad idea for Lucas to sneak up on Medusa from behind. Unfortunately, Medusa didn't only have a pair of eyes. The venomous snakes formed from her hair were all her eyes. Just as Lucas jumped up, he was discovered by Medusa. Medusa turned her head to look at Lucas, who was in midair, cleaving down with his axe with both hands. It's over. Zhou sighed inwardly. Although he wanted to help Lucas, he didn't have time to do so. Furthermore, even if he did, he wouldn't be able to deal with Medusa. He could only ensure that he could escape. Something that exceeded Zhou's expectations happened. Medusa's gaze landed on Lucas's body, which was enveloped by golden divine light. She failed to petrify his body. However, the golden light on Lucas's body dissipated, and the godlike golden light vanished. He flew out like a cannonball. Boom! Lucas's body crashed into a building, shattering the glass windows of the building. Even Lord Lucas. Barbara covered her mouth and widened her eyes, as though she couldn't believe her eyes. Go and see how Lucas is doing. I'll lure Medusa away. When Zhou saw that Medusa was chasing after Lucas, he said to Barbara and rushed out of the building. Do you have a death wish? Barbara reacted and wanted to pull Zhou, but Zhou had already rushed out of the building. He leaped into the air and slashed at Medusa with a huge sword in his hand. The sword beam that resembled a sun spun violently as it slashed at Medusa. The venomous snakes on Medusa's head faced the sword beam. Many of the venomous snakes that could even mince a helicopter were sliced apart by the sword beam. When they landed on the ground, they turned into black hair. Medusa didn't chase after Lucas and turned to look at Zhou. Barbara was alarmed, believing that Zhou was doomed. However, she was surprised to discover that Zhou, who had landed on the long street, wasn't petrified. Chapter 476. While Barbara was alarmed, Zhou's figure flashed as he ran to the other end of the long street. He was so fast that no one could see his trajectory. He was like a ghost, appearing every once in a while, appearing and disappearing at an unbelievable speed. Medusa let out a sharp cry as though she had turned on an accelerator as she chased after Zhou. Zhou originally didn't plan on fighting Medusa head-on. His injuries hadn't healed, so he wasn't suited for high-intensity battles. If they really fought, an intense clash of strength would probably tear his organs apart again. Ghost Step. He constantly used Ghost Step. Under Slaughterer's infinite essence energy lock onto him, Zhou continuously used Ghost Steps to lure Medusa towards the sea. Seeing that Medusa had been lured away by Zhou, Barbara hurriedly jumped down the building and ran towards the spot where Lucas had fallen. Lucas spat out a mouthful of blood. A portion of the skin on his chest had petrified, but it didn't look serious. Before Barbara could reach him, Lucas had already crawled out of the ruins. "Where's Medusa?" Lucas looked around, but he didn't see Medusa. "He was lured over there by the youth who came with you." Barbara pointed in the direction of Zhou's departure with a strange expression. Then, she couldn't help but ask, "Lord Lucas, who is he?" He can actually ignore Medusa's eyes of petrification. Furthermore, his speed is just too fast. I've never seen anyone as fast as him. Barbara wanted to say that he was faster than Lord Lucas, but she swallowed her words in the end. "He's my friend, a hero stronger than me," Lucas said as he chased after Zhou. He strode in the direction Zhou had lured Medusa away. "A hero stronger than Lord Lucas? But he's still so young. How is that possible?" Barbara was alarmed. Gritting her teeth, Barbara saw a motorcycle beside her. As its owner was already petrified, the key was still on it. She rode on it and turned the key. The motorcycle started normally and chased in the direction Zhou and company had left. It wasn't just Zhou. Many epic experts in the city chased after them. Although they didn't dare to fight Medusa head-on, they couldn't let Medusa wreak havoc. Unfortunately, their speed was much slower than Zhou and Medusa's. Soon, they were left behind. Bam! Medusa's body slammed through the thick wall and crashed out of a building. The venomous snakes spewed venom at Zhou like a storm. Zhou flashed to the back of another building, and the venom splashed onto the wall. The reinforced concrete building's walls corroded, producing many holes. Despite using Ghost Steps continuously, he wasn't as fast as Medusa. All he could do was use various buildings and terrain to barely guarantee that Medusa wouldn't catch up to him. Medusa's speed is just too fast. If it were a mythical creature that wasn't a speed-type mythical creature, I wouldn't find it so difficult. Zhou's body. Zhou's body, when's movement. As he Zhou a body Zhou was, he was in. Zhou leaped into the air and dodged the flying rubble and various glass shards. He stepped on a piece of glass and used Ghost Steps to teleport again. However, before Zhou could land, he saw Medusa rush to the spot where he landed. Her head was filled with venomous snake. Instantly switching to the Godfiend Life Providence, the white shadow of poison wings appeared on its back. With a flap of its wings, Zhou's figure charged into the sky and dodged the venomous snakes devouring. Medusa's feet exerted strength as the hard concrete ground cracked. However, she leaped into the air like a cannonball and chased after Zhou. Her hands carried astonishing finger beams as she grabbed at Zhou's flying body. Zhou's body drew a strange arc in the air like a flying immortal. Amidst the danger, there was a hint of elegance. He dodged Medusa's repeated attacks and rushed into the 20th floor of a building. Bam! Medusa slammed into the wall as well, leaving a huge hole in it. Fragments splattered everywhere. Zhou lured Medusa all the way to the sea. He originally wanted to escape Medusa in the city, but he couldn't. All he could do was attempt to escape from her in the sea. As he chased and fled, Joan tried his best to barely avoid being caught by Medusa. It was impossible for him to counterattack. Ignoring the fact that he hadn't recovered from his injuries, he was no match for Medusa even if he was in his best condition. After running for more than an hour, he finally arrived at the sea. Joan plunged into the sea and activated the 9 dragons' art as he swam deep into the sea. Although there were many dimensional creatures in the sea, it wasn't easy to find a terrifying existence like Medusa. However, Joan soon realized that his decision wasn't correct. After Medusa chased him into the sea, her speed wasn't affected at all. She was still as fast as ever. Instead, the venomous snakes became even more agile. They were like fish in water as they constantly attacked Joan in the sea. Joan immediately recalled that the legends said that Medusa had an affair with Poseidon. Fighting in the sea clearly wasn't difficult for her. It wasn't conducive to using ghost steps in the sea, so Joan had no choice but to rush out of the seawater and use the godfiend life providence to rush into the sky. Medusa shouldn't have the ability to fly, right? I'll escape into the sky. I don't believe she can catch up to me. Joan tore out of the water and summoned White Shadow of Poison to fly into the sky. Medusa also leaped up from the sea like a ferocious sea monster. She bared her fangs and brandished her claws as she charged at Joan. Her eyes constantly shot out beams of light as her snake hair swept towards Joan. Joan's figure constantly changed as he drew a strange arc. He moved in the air as though he was on the ground. He constantly used the force to move and dodge Medusa's attack. Bam! Medusa's leap was exhausted as she fell back into the sea, stirring up waves that were more than 100 feet tall. She really couldn't fly. Joan was immediately delighted. In-game, he had been sealed in the palace, so he had no chance to fly into the sky. He never expected Medusa to have such a weakness. However, before Joan could rejoice, he saw the swan-like wings on Medusa's back spread out as she flew up again. F***ku. Why didn't you use your wings just now? All Joan could do was continue fleeing, but he still couldn't shake off Medusa. He was chased to a dead end. Chapter 477. Escaping like this isn't a solution. How can I shake her off? Joan didn't have Lucas's fearless, sacrificial spirit. Now, he only wanted to shake off Medusa. As for whether Medusa would harm the world in the future, it wasn't something he could control. After all, he didn't want to die. Suddenly, Joan's heart stirred as he flew in a direction. The direction he was heading to was the island Xing had brought him to. Joan thought that perhaps he could use the magical waterfall and pool to shake off Medusa. As he had already cleared the dimensional zone and left his name on the dimensional zone's golden divine monument, he wouldn't be trapped inside again. He didn't have to worry about being trapped inside and not being able to come out. As long as he could avoid Medusa's pursuit and hide inside for a period of time, he could come out after Medusa left. He still didn't have the strength to kill the black six-winged dragon again. The last time, he had joined forces with Xing and had Zhang Yuji's help to kill the black six-winged dragon. This time, he was alone and had yet to recover from his serious injuries. If he really angered the black six-winged dragon, death was probably the only outcome. Joan lured Medusa to the island. After a while, Lucas and the group of epic experts chased him to the sea. By the sea, they found traces of battle, but they didn't find anyone. A shivering resident told them that they had gone to the other side of the sea. Medusa was already extremely terrifying, and there were many dimensional creatures at sea. When the other epic experts heard that Medusa had been lured to the sea, they secretly heaved a sigh of relief. They thought to themselves, perhaps Medusa won't return after being lured to the sea. Lucas didn't care. He jumped onto a boat and started the engine to chase deep into the sea. Lord Lucas, I'll go with you. Barbara rushed over on her motorcycle and threw it to the ground before jumping onto the boat. "Get off quickly. It's too dangerous at sea," Lucas said. "Lord Lucas, have you forgotten? I came to the peninsula of gods from the sea. I'm a daughter of the sea to begin with. I can help you track your friends and Medusa at sea. However, you won't be able to find them even if you drive a boat," Barbara said as she started the boat. Lucas thought about it and agreed. Looking at the endless sea, other than knowing a general direction, he had no idea how to find Joan and Medusa. "Then fight with the great Lucas, young lady," Lucas said as he stood at the bow of the ship and looked at the sea. After much difficulty, Joan finally returned to the island that nurtured the water sprites. Now, he wasn't in the mood to kill the water sprites. With a few leaps, he rushed to the waterfall on the island and plunged into the pool. Bang! Just as Joan entered the pool, Medusa's gaze landed on the pool, causing a wave that was several meters tall to explode. After the pool calmed down, Joan was nowhere to be seen. In the waterfall cave, Joan followed the water flow and quickly exited the waterfall cave. Without seeing Medusa, Joan heaved a sigh of relief. He thought to himself, "Medusa can't see my corpse in the pool. I hope she doesn't jump down after me." However, what he was afraid of happened. Joan heard the sound of water splashing from the waterfall cave. Medusa had already rushed out of the water. "I'm going to die." Joan hurriedly burrowed into the pool, hoping to get out. However, Medusa's snake hair had already burrowed into the pool. It was like a snake's nest with countless venomous snakes twisting in the pool. This fellow's intelligence is way too high. She actually knows how to cut off my exit. Joan felt depressed, but he had no choice but to move his body to dodge Medusa's attack. Bam! Medusa's gaze shot in all directions, causing the rocks and grass around her to explode and make a loud noise. Joan immediately felt that something was amiss. It was already so difficult to deal with a single Medusa. With her causing a ruckus, the black six-winged dragon would definitely be awakened. When the time came, wouldn't he die a worse death when facing two terrifying mythical creatures? Now, Joan wished he had an invisibility cloak and could immediately vanish in front of Medusa. Roar! An angry roar came from the middle of the island. The dragon was indeed awakened as it transformed into a black bolt of lightning and charged over. "Come and bless me. Although they are dimensional creatures, they aren't of the same species. They might be enemies. Let them fight it out," Joan prayed inwardly. Unfortunately, he quickly realized that his thoughts were too naive. After the dragon rushed over, it ignored Medusa. It opened its mouth and spat out a mouthful of poisonous smoke at Joan. "I'm really doomed." Joan suddenly realized that he shouldn't have come here. It was too late to say anything now. There was the black dragon in front and Medusa behind. They attacked Joan from the front and back, completely cutting off his chances of escaping. Even if he used ghost steps, it was impossible for him to be faster than two mythical creatures. Regardless of whether he advanced or retreated, it was a dead end. Seeing that the two mythical creatures had surrounded Joan with no chance of escape, Joan gritted his teeth and switched to the godfiend Life Providence. The Lost Country ring appeared on his finger. With a spin of the ring, Joan's body immediately vanished from the pincer attack. Lucas and Barbara sailed the boat to search for traces of Joan and Medusa. The more Barbara searched, the more her heart sank. Finally, she couldn't help but say to Lucas, "Lord Lucas, your friend is probably dead. Although he's very strong, it's difficult for even a god to survive against an existence like Medusa." "No, Barbara, you underestimate my friend. He's like me, a great human hero. I firmly believe that he's safe and sound. Perhaps he has already killed Medusa. We have to find him quickly. We can't let him enjoy the glory alone." However, Lucas had a determined expression. He continued standing at the bow of the boat and sized up the surrounding sea, searching for traces of Joan. "That's impossible. That's Medusa, a demoness from myths and legends. Even the legendary human prince had to borrow a lot of artifacts from the goddess of wisdom to be able to defeat her. Barbara muttered in her heart, but she didn't dare to say it out loud. There seems to be an island over there. Let's go take a look, Lucas instructed. On the island, Zhou Wen's figure instantly vanished before appearing on the back of the black six-winged dragon. Without any hesitation, Zhou Wen wrapped one hand around the black six-winged dragon's neck. He wore a silver spiderweb glove on his palm. After touching the scales on the black six-winged dragon's neck, it immediately stuck firmly to it. Chapter 478. Sensing Zhou Wen on its back, the black six-winged dragon immediately erupted with terrifying black flames, hoping to shake Zhou Wen off its back. However, Zhou Wen was already prepared. He transformed into the demon dragon true body and stuck to its body. No matter how much the black flames on its body erupted, he refused to let go. Medusa was originally attacking Zhou Wen, but as she was on the black six-winged dragon's back, her gaze immediately landed on the black six-winged dragon. When the eyes of petrification landed on Zhou Wen through the truth listener earring, it would only increase Zhou Wen's essence energy, allowing him to maintain his demon dragon true body state. However, the black six-winged dragon didn't have such an ability. When Medusa's eyes of petrification looked at it, the scales on its body began to petrify. Roar! The black six-winged dragon was enraged as demonic flames rose from its back. Two pairs of hidden wings appeared, transforming into a true black six-winged dragon. The petrified scales on its body shattered like a stone shell, revealing the new scales beneath. The 6 dragon wings unfurled fiercely, and streaks of terrifying black flames shot out. They were like blades formed from black flames, and they shot towards Medusa. Medusa wasn't to be outdone as she brandished her snake hair to meet the black flaming saber beams. Saber beams collided with the snake hair. Although the saber beams shattered, many of the venomous snakes were also severed. Instantly, the two mythical creatures were enraged as they began a monstrous battle. Zhou Wen was firmly attached to the black six-winged dragon's back. No matter how intense the black six-winged dragon's battle was, it wasn't flung off. Zhou Wen's sky spider glove had a very strong adhesive force. Once he was stuck, unless he let go, he could only chop off his hand. In such a terrifying battle, it wasn't easy to survive. Thankfully, Zhou Wen had the demon dragon true body. Otherwise, just the aftershocks of the battle or the black flames that erupted from the black six-winged dragon would be enough to kill him. Furthermore, there was a crucial point. Medusa's eyes of petrification provided Zhou Wen with an endless supply of primordial energy. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to hold on. With only the demon dragon true body protecting him, he would be instantly killed in such a battle. Zhou Wen hugged the black six-winged dragon's neck tightly as he lay on its back. If Medusa wanted to kill him, she would definitely attack the black six-winged dragon. How could the black six-winged dragon allow her to bully it? The more the two fought, the angrier they became. Instantly, the mountain walls on the island shattered and the ground cracked. The poison corroded the rocks, and the black flames turned the originally lush island into a sea of flames. Only the golden apple tree remained unharmed as though it was protected by a mysterious force. Zhou Wen wished he could immediately escape from the black six-winged dragon's back. Now that the black six-winged dragon and Medusa were truly enraged, even without him, the two monsters probably wouldn't stop. However, Zhou Wen really couldn't escape now. The force field produced by their battle pressed him firmly onto the back of the six-winged black dragon. If Zhou Wen forcefully rushed out, he would probably be struck by a terrifying explosive force in midair and be embroiled in their battle. His internal organs were hurting terribly. The wounds from earlier had probably torn open once more. Even though he had the phantom dragon true body protecting him, his body had still suffered quite a bit of damage. Blood kept flowing out from his mouth and nose. "I'm going to die." Zhouwen endured the pain and hugged the black six-winged dragon's neck tightly. He tried his best to stick his body to its scales to reduce the extent of the damage. The black six-winged dragon was indeed worthy of being an existence that guarded the golden apple. It was actually able to fight a legendary demoness like Medusa to a draw. Although Medusa's eyes of petrification had some effect on it, it was difficult for it to completely petrify it. The petrified parts were only the scales on the surface. After they shattered, new scales grew underneath. The battle between the two monsters allowed Zhouwen to see some of the abilities they hadn't used when he fought them previously. As Zhouwen's strength hadn't reached that level, there was no need for them to use many skills when fighting him. Now that they had encountered an opponent that was on par with them, they used all sorts of skills, broadening Zhouwen's horizons. Zhouwen secretly rejoiced that they had been able to kill the black six-winged dragon the last time purely because of luck. If it wasn't for the fact that the black six-winged dragon had been enraged by him and completely ignored it, giving demonic neonate a chance to stab the ancient sword into its heart, he and Ensheng would probably have been tortured in a head-on battle. Of course, Zhang Yuji had also played a key role. Otherwise, Zhouwen would have died. Zhouwen had the intention of summoning demonic neonate and letting her do it again, but in the current situation, even if he could kill one of them, the other wasn't something Zhouwen could deal with. In the end, death was the only outcome. Just as Zhouwen was thinking about how he could survive, the black six-winged dragon had already thrown Medusa to the ground and opened its mouth to bite her head. The venomous snake on Medusa's head curled over, but most of it was bitten off by the black six-winged dragon. Suddenly, tears of blood rolled out of Medusa's eyes. Two strange beams of light shot out from her eyes. The eyes of petrification didn't have any corporeal light. Medusa had another skill that shot light from her eyes, but it wasn't the eyes of petrification. It only had powerful destructive power and didn't have the power of petrification. However, the light that shot out this time was different from the other two. The light that shot out from the bloody tears shone on the black six-winged dragon's body, causing its body to begin petrifying. This petrification was different from before. Not only did the scales on the surface petrify, but the insides of the black six-winged dragon's body also petrified. However, the petrification speed wasn't very fast. Roar! Black flames rose from the black six-winged dragon's body as terrifying power erupted. It wanted to resist the petrification of its body, but it was useless this time. More and more parts of its body were petrified. First, it was its chest and head, then its front legs, and then its body and hind leg. In just a moment, the black six-winged dragon was about to turn into a statue. What's going on? Could this be the true power of Medusa's eyes of petrification? Was it just for fun? Zhouwen was alarmed. What was even worse was that the power of the Truth Listener earring was gradually unable to withstand the petrification beam. Zhouwen's skin began to show signs of petrification after his demon dragon transformation. I can't wait any longer. Zhouwen knew that he would probably lose his life if he waited any longer. He immediately summoned demonic neonate and Banana Fairy. He held the fan that Banana Fairy had transformed into and fanned Medusa below. A strong gust of wind blew away Medusa's snake hair. Demonic neonate didn't hesitate as the ancient sword tore out of its scabbard and transformed into a purple beam that stabbed at Medusa's head. The black six-winged dragon hadn't completely petrified as it continued pressing down on Medusa. Medusa was powerless to dodge, and could only twist her head to avoid the ancient sword. However, the ancient sword was simply too close to her, and she was unable to completely dodge it. A purple light flashed, and the ancient sword stabbed into her left eye. Immediately, blood flowed out from the wound, and Medusa let out a shrill scream. Chapter 479. Medusa let out a painful cry as a tremendous force surged out of her body, sending the half-petrified black six-winged dragon retreating more than 10 meters. She grabbed the hilt of the ancient sword with her fingertips and pulled it out of her eye like a thorn before throwing it ruthlessly. Joan jumped down from the back of the black six-winged dragon and looked at Medusa's eyes. He saw that the eye that had been pierced by the ancient sword was blood-red. Blood kept gushing out, and it looked like her injuries were not light. Upon discovering Joan, Medusa angrily rushed over, but the petrified black dragon's body emitted cracking sounds. Its petrified flesh and bones cracked as it forcefully slammed into Medusa. Medusa was hit head-on and immediately rolled out. However, another purple beam flashed. The ancient sword that Medusa had thrown out flew back. While she was entangled with the black six-winged dragon, it stabbed into her other eye. Demonic neonate hid in the distance with a cold look in her eyes. Medusa's eyes were completely blinded as she immediately turned into a venomous snake that had lost its fangs. Although her combat strength was still terrifying, she wasn't as powerful as before. The black six-winged dragon dragged its half-petrified body and fought the blind Medusa. They were still locked in battle, but Joan finally managed to escape the battlefield. He watched the two monsters fight. The ground trembled as the two monsters fought in close combat. The ground cracked and the mountains collapsed as though it was the end of the world. Joan hid far away. When he saw Medusa and the black six-winged dragon crash into the sea together, the waves in the sea churned and stirred up huge waves. He couldn't help but be secretly delighted. If they really end up with an internecine outcome, I might really be lucky this time. I might be able to take advantage of the situation and kill two mythical creatures at once. As he thought this, he saw the black six-winged dragon and Medusa's figures sink into the sea. All he could see was the surging waves on the surface of the sea, but he didn't know what was happening below. After a while, the sea calmed down, but a lot of red liquid spread out. Don't tell me both of them are dead? If they die, will the crystals and companion eggs in their bodies be left behind? Just as Joan was considering if he should dive into the sea to fish up the corpse, he suddenly saw the seawater erupt like a volcano. Medusa, whose face was covered in blood and body was riddled with wounds, with a missing arm, rushed out of the sea. The ancient sword in her eyes had yet to be pulled out, but at that moment she completely ignored it and charged at Joan with a shrill cry. Although her eyes were blind and she no longer had the ability to petrify, the poisonous snake on her head still allowed her to have the ability to see, so she wasn't completely blind. Joan turned around and ran. Although Medusa looked tragic, she was still a mythical creature. To be able to kill the black six-winged dragon in such a state, her strength was indeed terrifying. Medusa chased after him with all her might, as though she hated Joan to the core. However, Joan soon realized that her speed was much slower. Previously, Joan wasn't as fast as her even with Ghost Step. Now, he could open up a distance with Ghost Step. Medusa's speed was indeed much slower. It was completely different from before. Joan felt a lot more at ease as he rushed into the waterfall pool and returned to the island in reality. Medusa also rushed out, but Joan realized that her speed was slowing down. Furthermore, her body was constantly bleeding. It looked like her aura was rapidly weakening. She's about to die. Joan was delighted as he watched Medusa's aura weaken and her body become slower and slower. More importantly, demonic Neonate's ancient sword had completely sunk into her eyes. It had probably stabbed into her brain. Although Medusa was no longer a threat to him, Joan still tried his best to maintain the same distance from her. Who knew if Medusa would unleash a huge explosion in the end, just like when the black six-winged dragon died. However, Joan soon realized that Medusa was really on the brink of death. As she walked, there was a large pool of blood on the ground. The wounds on her body were constantly bleeding. With her physique, her wounds shouldn't have been bleeding all the time. Clearly, the black six-winged dragon's power was strange, preventing her wounds from healing. Now, Medusa was even staggering as she walked. She was like a hobbling old woman. She no longer had her previous might. When Joan retreated to the beach, Medusa seemed to know that she was at the end of her tether. She released her final strength and pounced at Joan with a sharp cry. Her pounce looked rather imposing, but her strength was far from enough. She no longer had the terrifying energy fluctuations from before. Joan summoned Overlord's sword and slashed out a sword beam at Medusa, who was pouncing at him. Lucas and Barbara had already arrived near the island. Lucas, who was looking around, saw Joan standing on the beach and was immediately overjoyed. Just as he was about to call out to him, he suddenly saw Medusa pounce at Joan. Barbara also saw this scene and immediately cried out in alarm. However, in the next second, Joan drew his sword and slashed at the pouncing Medusa. The intense sword beam was like a sun's halo as it slashed at Medusa's neck. Then, Medusa's body was sent flying by the impact of the sword beam. As the gear-like sword beam constantly spun and sliced, the flesh and bones of her neck were severed. Finally, her head was chopped off and flew into the air. Barbara's screams came to a halt. Her mouth was agape as she widened her eyes at the unbelievable scene. The demoness, Medusa, who had wreaked havoc in the entire city and left countless epic experts on the peninsula of gods helpless, had been beheaded with a single strike. It was unbelievable. Lucas was also surprised. Then, he subconsciously took out his cell phone out of habit and took a photo of it. Crack! The image on the phone screen froze. Under the setting sun, a man stood on the beach with his back facing the camera. He held a huge sword that was pointed diagonally at the ground. Opposite the youth, Medusa's body floated into the air. Blood spewed out as a head flew into the air. The entire scene looked extremely tense, with an indescribable beauty of violence. The sword-wielding man's calmness formed a strong contrast with the twisting venomous snake on Medusa's head and the blood that spewed out. It made people feel their blood boil for some reason when they saw this photo. Lucas looked at the photo and suddenly had a whim. After adding a line of explanation, he tried to upload it to his online account. Medusa's Apocalypse, the descent of a hero that's close to God. The moment this photo was posted, it immediately exploded on the internet. Countless people on the Peninsula of Gods left comments when they saw this photo. Chapter 480. Although the people who paid attention to Lucas were basically young people from the Peninsula of Gods, it was also because of this that they knew how terrifying Medusa was. Many people had seen Medusa wreak havoc in the entire city with their own eyes. It was unknown how many innocent citizens had been harmed. So many epic experts had been mercilessly killed by Medusa. Even those who had never fought Medusa knew that such a legendary demoness was definitely at the mythical stage. Now that Medusa had been killed, they were pleasantly surprised. Many people left comments asking Lucas if Medusa had really been killed. Many people also asked who the man who killed Medusa was and who the sword-wielding man was. Then, this photo and Lucas's message spread on the internet at the speed of light, triggering a tsunami-like heated discussion on the internet. There were two main points of discussion. One was the authenticity of the photo, and the other was who the sword-wielding man was. Lucas's personal page was about to explode. Everyone was waiting for Lucas's reply. However, Lucas didn't read the comments. After he posted the photo, he boarded the island with Barbara. "Haha, I knew you could do it. You're a great hero like Lucas. You saved our city." Lucas went forward and gave Joan a firm hug. "I'm not as great as you." Joan's words weren't sarcastic, but sincere. Lucas knew that he couldn't do it, but he was only doing what he could. Although there was an accident, it wasn't his original intention. "One day, you will surpass me." However, Lucas was filled with confidence. He patted Joan on the shoulder and said, "Quick, take a look at your spoils of war. That's the reward you deserve. It's also a hero's medal." Joan rolled his eyes inwardly. He was clearly cutting his own flesh to dig for treasure. Why did it sound so righteous when it came from Lucas's mouth? Joan didn't stand on ceremony. This was a mythical creature he had risked his life to kill, so he naturally couldn't let it go. Soon, Zhou discovered a dimensional crystal in Medusa's corpse. There was a projection of Medusa in the dimensional crystal. It was clearly an essence energy skill crystal. Old friend, your luck is really good. You actually obtained Medusa's essence energy skill crystal. Come on, let me take a photo of you and upload it online with the photo from before. Let them witness the heroic moment together. As Lucas spoke, he was about to take a photo with his phone. What did you say? Zhou hurriedly stopped Lucas and glared at him. I said, record it and upload it online. This is your heroic history, Lucas said. No, what do you mean by the photo? Zhou asked again. That's it. I just took a photo of you and uploaded it online. The response is pretty good. You will soon become a hero that everyone knows. Lucas opened his personal page and showed the photo to Zhou as though he was flaunting it. Zhou saw that there were more than 60,000 replies, and it was still increasing. Immediately, his face turned livid. Quickly delete the photo. Zhou was really anxious. Originally, the Bureau and the 6 families didn't know that he had advanced to the epic stage. If they knew that he had advanced to the epic stage and had killed a dimensional creature like Medusa, they would only be more careful when they sent people to cause trouble for him in the future. The people they sent would also be more powerful. Wouldn't that be causing trouble for himself? Why delete it? Isn't that good? Lucas asked in puzzlement. I don't want to be a hero, nor do I want to be famous. Lucas, you mustn't tell anyone about what happened today. Don't let others know that I killed Medusa, alright? Zhou also knew that it was useless to delete it now. This photo had probably been forwarded countless times. He took a closer look at the photo and realized that there was only a back view. Furthermore, due to the sunlight reflecting off the Overlord's sword, the blade was almost indistinct. Even his back was affected by the light and shadows, so it shouldn't be that easy to recognize him. Although I don't know why you have such a strange request, as your friend, I'll respect your decision. Do you still want to delete this photo? Lucas said. Forget it. Zhou shook his head. If he deleted it now, it would only make things worse. Zhou looked at Barbara and asked, Missy, can you help me keep this a secret? No, Barbara said with a shake of her head. Barbara, he's my friend. Lucas said anxiously. Barbara took out a notebook and pen and handed it to Zhou. She blinked and said, It's fine if you want me to help you keep a secret, but you have to give me an autograph. Why do you want my autograph? Zhou frowned slightly. He still remembered Jack's matter clearly, so he usually didn't sign autographs easily. Fool, it's because you are her hero. Lucas patted Zhou on the back and laughed. Zhou knew that he had been overthinking when he saw Barbara's face turn red. I can give you an autograph, but don't tell anyone about this, all right? Zhou took the notebook and pen and signed his name. Sure. Barbara took the notebook and carefully looked at Zhou's signature. Then, she closed it carefully and hugged it to her chest. She thought happily, of course I'll keep it a secret for you. Only I know that you're the hero who killed Medusa. Only I have your signature. This is a hero and secret that belongs to me alone. Are you going back with us? Lucas asked Zhou. It's inevitable that I'll be suspected if I go back with you. Go back first. Zhou didn't return with them because of this. He still wanted to enter the island to see if the black six-winged dragon was dead. If it was dead, there might be something like a crystal left behind. It would be best if he could obtain a companion egg. Even if there was nothing left, it wouldn't be bad to pluck another golden apple. However, Zhou remembered that the golden apple had just grown the last time. It hadn't grown up yet, so it probably hadn't ripened yet. After Lucas and Barbara left, Zhou entered the dimensional zone through the pool and went to the apple tree to take a look. The golden apple had only just grown and was still far from ripening. Even if it was plucked now, it would probably be useless. Unable to find the ruins of the black six-winged dragon on the island, Zhou came to the seawater where it had fought Medusa. He summoned the silver water snake and got it to search to see if it could find anything. Chapter 481. As soon as the silver water snake entered the sea, it merged with the seawater as if it had disappeared. Zhou got it to search the bottom of the sea. After a while, he saw the silver water snake crawl out of the sea with something in its mouth. Zhou saw that it looked like a black pineapple without any leaf. On careful look, he realized that it was an egg covered in scales. Black six-winged dragon's egg? Zhou was overjoyed. The silver water snake handed the egg to Zhou, who used his mysterious phone to take a look. It was indeed a mythical companion egg. Six-winged guardian dragon, mythical life providence, guardian dragon life soul, wings of black flame wheel of fortune, the last guardian strength, 69 speed, 68 constitution, 68 primordial energy, 65 innate skills, poison breath, dragon's fury, hellfire, 6 wings slash. Companion form, devil flame dragon wings. A real mythical companion beast. Zhou was pleasantly surprised. This was the first time he had seen a real mythical companion egg. The ones he had only had the potential to reach the mythical stage, but none of them had truly advanced to the mythical stage. The one closest to the true mythical stage was demonic neonate, but her stats were too low. She needed to grow again. Otherwise, she could only release her flying sword from afar, unable to participate in the battle head-on. This six-winged guardian dragon was at the mythical stage. If it could hatch, it would undoubtedly increase Zhou strength tremendously. With it, the chances of Zhou defeating the mythical creature in the temple were much higher. The essence energy requirements are definitely very high, but my slaughterer has the ability to have unlimited essence energy. I should be able to hatch it, right? With that in mind, Zhou used the mysterious phone to take a picture of the six-winged guardian dragon into the phone before getting the blood-colored avatar to attempt to hatch it. The incubation was surprisingly smooth. After activating Slaughterer, the blood-colored avatar easily hatched the six-winged guardian dragon. A six-winged guardian black dragon tattoo appeared on his back. Zhou summoned the six-winged guardian dragon excitedly. Seeing a black dragon appear in front of him, the feeling was indescribable. However, the six-winged guardian dragon that appeared in front of Zhou only had 2 wings. It wasn't in its six-winged form. After Zhou made it use its life soul, the six-winged guardian dragon turned into a six-winged state and its strength greatly increased. After getting the six-winged guardian dragon to use all its skills, Zhou realized that this fellow's skills weren't complete. It lacked a few skills compared to the real six-winged guardian dragon, but these 4 skills were enough. What caught Zhou's attention was its Wheel of Destiny. Demonic Neonate also had a Wheel of Destiny, but it was written as First Revolution without any annotations. However, the six-winged guardian dragon was different. Behind its Wheel of Destiny was written, The Last Guardian. Furthermore, there were annotations. The Final Guardian, Miracle of Life Guardian. Although there were annotations, Zhou still didn't understand what they meant. Zhou got the six-winged guardian dragon to demonstrate, but it couldn't do so. Regardless, Zhou was still very excited to have his first true mythical companion beast. Riding the six-winged guardian dragon, Zhou circled the sky and realized that it wasn't as comfortable as he had imagined. This fellow's flying state was too violent and unstable. Riding it was like riding a wild horse that had escaped its reins. It didn't feel good. The legendary dragon Knight of the West doesn't look as cool as it looks when he rides a giant dragon. Zhou unsummoned the dragon and glanced at the golden apple that had yet to ripen. Finally, he gave up on plucking it and left the mysterious dimensional zone. After returning to the Peninsula of Gods, he quickly contacted Ansheng. You were the one who killed Medusa, right? Ansheng had clearly seen the photos on the internet and asked directly. Zhouwen recounted the situation. And Xing wasn't as excited as Lucas and company. He said to Zhouwen sternly, "Young Master Wen, you only have one life. Furthermore, it doesn't belong to you alone. I hope you won't use it to do such dangerous things again. Originally, I only wanted to lure Medusa away before shaking it off. I never expected that I couldn't shake it off no matter how hard I tried. In the end, I had no choice," Zhouwen explained. "There definitely won't be a next time. Forget it. I'll take you back quickly. I can't let you stay outside any longer. It's only been a few days since we came out, and you almost died twice. It's best you return to school and play games," Xing said. "Has the ban on the Peninsula of Gods been lifted?" Zhouwen asked. Once Medusa's matter broke out, the Peninsula of Gods was already in chaos. What's the use of a ban? Now that the thief has probably left the Peninsula of Gods, there's naturally no need to continue banning him from leaving the country. And Xing paused before saying, "Come back quickly. I'll book the plane tickets now." When Zhouwen returned to the hotel, and Xing didn't say anything else. However, he booked the earliest plane tickets to leave the Peninsula of Gods. They could leave early the next morning. While Zhouwen was resting, he switched on his phone to look at Lucas's personal page. The number of comments under the photo had already exceeded 200,000. The latest comments were asking who the hero who was close to a god was. This was because after Lucas returned, he had confirmed Medusa's death. Now they only wanted to know who had killed Medusa. Thankfully, the photo only had a back view. Furthermore, due to the lighting, it wasn't very clear. Even Xing had to guess. It was impossible to recognize Zhouwen from such a photo. No matter how the people from the bureau guessed, they probably wouldn't think of him. After all, in the eyes of the bureau, he was still a student who hadn't advanced to the epic stage. This photo wasn't just popular on the Peninsula of Gods. Even the upper echelons of the Federation noticed it. After all, Medusa had truly appeared. Such a creature was undoubtedly at the mythical stage. They were also very concerned about people who could kill mythical creatures. It wasn't that no one in the Federation could kill mythical creatures. At the very least, there were such people in the 6 families. However, that was under the condition of relying on mythical pet. Furthermore, there weren't many of them. There were only a few in a family. Now that a person who could kill a mythical creature had suddenly appeared, it naturally attracted the attention of many factions. It wasn't just the 6 families. Many bigwigs in various places were also guessing who this person was and if he was from the 6 families. However, not many people knew the answer. The next morning, Xing took Zhouwen to the airport. Zhouwen sat in the departure lounge while Xing went to the bathroom. Just as he was sending a message to bid farewell to Lucas, a person walked to the chair behind Zhouwen and sat down. Zhouwen didn't pay attention to the person, but after he sat down, he leaned against the backrest and sat with his back facing Zhouwen. The back of his head touched Zhouwen's hair. Zhouwen frowned slightly. Just as he was about to lean his head forward and not be so close to him, he heard a voice behind him. "It looks like you've been doing well recently." Chapter 482. When Zhouwen heard this voice, his body trembled. He was pleasantly surprised. Just as he was about to stand up and turn to look at him, he heard him say, "Just sit there and don't move." "Zhongzia, where have you been all this time? Why are you here?" Zhouwen asked in a low voice. He could tell that the voice belonged to Zhongzia. He knew that Zhongzia's situation might be worse than his. At the very least, the Bureau wouldn't dare openly capture him and Hui Haifeng, but they weren't that polite to Zhongzia and Jiang Yan. "I'm walking around and taking the bunch of dogs from the Bureau out for a stroll." Zhongzia leaned against Zhouwen and said in a relaxed tone, "As for you, the speed at which you grow is really surprising. You were the one who killed Medusa, right?" "That was an accident." Zhouwen paused and said, "I got the thing you left behind. It's on me now. I'll give it to you." There's no need. That was a souvenir I left for you, Zhongzia said lazily. Did teacher use that method? Zhouwen asked after a moment of silence. Who knows? Zhongzia curled his lips and said, even if you know what method was used, what's the point? Zhouwen thought that it made sense, and was momentarily at a loss for words. Did Medusa drop a companion egg? Zhongzia asked. No, there was only one essence energy skill crystal, Zhouwen answered truthfully. Although the two of them hadn't spent much time together, perhaps because they were both Wang Mingyuan's students and were in the same situation, or perhaps because of some other reason, Zhouwen had a nagging feeling that Zhongzia was different from others. If it wasn't necessary, he wasn't willing to be perfunctory with Zhongzia. Lend me the Medusa crystal. Pass it to me from the left. The surveillance cameras can't capture it, Zhongzia said. What do you want it for? Zhouwen said as he took out the Medusa crystal and handed it to Zhongzia. He had seen the requirements of the Medusa crystal. Zhouwen couldn't meet the requirements of 41 Constitution and 21 Curse Stat. In addition, there were the requirements for life providences and life souls. Zhouwen didn't know if his life providences and life souls had any effects, so he couldn't be sure. However, just the stat requirement was enough to prevent him from using Medusa crystals for the time being. Furthermore, if there was a need, he could head to the Cursed Demon Palace to grind Medusa again. I need it to do something. Don't ask me what it is, I don't want to say. Zhongzia took the dimensional crystal and after a while, he touched Zhouwen's hand and said, This is for you. Treat it as interest. Zhouwen took it and saw that it was a box. Just as he was about to open it, he heard Zhongzia say, Don't look at it now. Find a place without anyone to look at it. Zhouwen was about to say something when Zhongzia stood up. I hope I'll still be me the next time we meet. With that said, Zhongzia walked out of the hall while Zhouwen sat there motionlessly. It was not difficult to turn back, but it was difficult to meet again. When Enshing returned, Zhongzia had already disappeared into the crowd outside. If it wasn't for the box in his hand, Zhouwen would have suspected that what had just happened had really happened. The scene of Wang Mingyuan cooking for the four of them and playing cards with them felt like it had happened yesterday. However, today, they couldn't even look each other in the eye when they sat down to talk. This darn world, Zhouwen cursed softly as though he was venting some emotions in his heart. Lucas said that he wanted to send them off, but Zhouwen told him that there was no need. The reason Enshing didn't get Zhouwen to inform him in advance was because he didn't want him to send them off. He didn't want anyone to connect the person in the photo to Zhouwen. Enshing sent Zhouwen all the way back to school. From the looks of it, he definitely wouldn't allow any accidents to happen to Zhouwen. In fact, Zhouwen didn't have the energy to cause trouble. His injuries had worsened, so he really didn't want to move. After returning to his dorm, he lay down on the bed and quickly fell asleep. When he woke up, it was already noon. He still didn't feel hungry, so Zhouwen didn't eat. Thinking of the box Zhongzia had given him, he took it out of the chaos bead and opened it. There's nothing? Zhouwen couldn't help but be taken aback. The box was empty. That's not right. Zhouwen quickly realized that the box wasn't empty. As the box was made of paper, it was very light. However, Zhouwen could feel that the box was rather heavy, as though there was a piece of metal inside. Could it be? Zhouwen thought of something and reached his hand into the box. Inside the empty box, there seemed to be something blocking Zhouwen's hand, preventing him from reaching his hand in. When Zhouwen's fingers touched it, he felt as though he had touched something cold. Furthermore, where his fingertips touched, space distorted visibly, as though a transparent plastic sheet had been wrinkled. No way! Zhouwen's expression turned odd. He took out his mysterious phone and shone it at the box. Immediately, a row of information appeared on the phone. Invisibility cloak. Mythical. Just looking at the top row of information, many thoughts flashed through Zhouwen's mind as he understood many things. The person who stole the invisibility cloak companion egg was Zhongxia? Zhou carefully recalled and suddenly understood why he found the thief's photo somewhat familiar. Now that he thought about it, the thief's looks and even his figure were different from Zhongxia's. However, his eyes had Zhongxia's unique temperament. Zhongxia didn't steal the invisibility cloak because he was trapped in the cursed demon palace. Instead, he stole the invisibility cloak to deal with Medusa's eyes of petrification, right? Zhou gradually pondered over the cause and effect of the matter. Clearly, Zhongxia hadn't been able to incubate the invisibility cloak, so he hadn't been able to kill Medusa. However, he had used some unknown method to get Medusa out of the cursed demon palace. With Zhou understanding of his character, Zhongxia definitely wanted to use the experts on the Peninsula of Gods to kill Medusa. As for how many people would die, Zhongxia probably didn't care. In the end, Medusa was killed by Zhou, which was why he had come to see Zhou. Otherwise, Zhou wouldn't have known that he was the one who had stolen the invisibility cloak. He probably wouldn't even know that he had been here. Zhongxia, what are you doing? Zhou was somewhat worried. Zhongxia's character was too extreme, and he was extremely talented. If he really did evil, he might become a devil like Jing Daoxian. Looking at the invisibility cloak companion egg in his hand, Zhou expression turned extremely complicated. He had originally gone to the Peninsula of Gods for the invisibility cloak, but he never expected that the invisibility cloak would land in his hands in such a manner. Chapter 483. Zhou carefully looked at the invisibility cloak's information and felt that something was amiss. Invisibility cloak, mythical life providence, flawless life soul, combat cloak wheel of destiny, deity possession strength, 54 speed, 71 constitution, 67 essence energy, 72 talent skill, invisibility companion form. Invisibility. There wasn't any problem with the stat. The Wheel of Destiny was somewhat odd. The annotation said that it was a miracle of a deity's descent. These weren't a problem, but the invisibility cloak was a companion egg. However, its information didn't say that it was a companion egg. It was the same as a companion beast that had already hatched. Zhou took out the transparent companion egg from the box. He could touch it. It was in the shape of an egg and was about the size of a rugby ball. He attempted to inject his essence energy into it, but the invisibility cloak companion egg didn't react at all. It didn't accept his essence energy at all, much less take the initiative to absorb it. I wonder what method the Zhang family used back then to turn the invisibility cloak back into a companion egg state. Although the invisibility cloak doesn't have an owner now and looks the same as an ordinary companion egg, it's essentially in a state that has already hatched. It's no wonder no one has been able to hatch it after so many years. Zhou was already mentally prepared, so he didn't find it strange that he couldn't hatch it. With the companion egg in hand, Zhou switched his essence energy art to the first order of chaos before attempting to inject his essence energy into the companion egg. Legend had it that the invisibility cloak came from the temple of the god of dual natures, Phanas. As for the relationship between Phanas and chaos, it was very subtle. Furthermore, they came from the same pantheon. Zhou felt that perhaps the first order of chaos would be of some use. The outcome didn't disappoint Zhou. After converting the essence energy art to the first order of chaos, the invisibility cloak actually accepted Zhou's essence energy. The entire companion egg trembled slightly. Zhou was delighted as he sped up the infusion of essence energy, but the companion egg only trembled slightly. When Zhou expended all his essence energy, the invisibility cloak stopped moving. What's going on now? Will it work or not? Zhou tried a few more times. When he infused his essence energy, the invisibility cloak companion egg reacted. Once he stopped, the invisibility cloak's reaction disappeared, but there were no signs of it hatching. After some thought, Zhouwen felt that this might have something to do with his first order of chaos's low level. He had only gained basic mastery of the first order of chaos and hadn't even condensed a life providence. If he could cultivate it to a higher level, he might be able to hatch an invisibility cloak. Zhouwen had no choice but to put away the invisibility cloak. Even if he were to cultivate the first order of chaos now, it wasn't something that could be improved in a short period of time. Although I can't use the invisibility cloak for the time being, I've accidentally obtained a six-winged guardian dragon companion beast. I can give it a try and see if I can fight that snake in the temple. Zhouwen took out his phone and activated the Zhuolu Instance dungeon. When he arrived at the temple guarded by the snake again, Zhouwen summoned the six-winged guardian dragon and got it to fight the snake. The six-winged guardian dragon was slightly faster than the snake, but its strength was clearly not as strong as the snake. A terrifying collision erupted in the palace. Dragon breath, demonic flames, poisonous smoke, and all sorts of powers erupted. The blood-colored avatar was only affected by the aftershocks and was nearly killed. Thankfully, Zhouwen had activated the demon dragon true body in time to prevent himself from dying. Seeing that although the six-winged guardian dragon was at a disadvantage, the snake couldn't kill it in a short period of time, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. With the six-winged guardian dragon as the main force, he might have a chance of killing the snake. That way, there was no need for him to get the invisibility cloak. Zhouwen summoned demonic neonate and banana fairy. Just as he was about to rush in to help, he saw the snake's eyes turn into mirrors. Then, it glanced at the six-winged guardian dragon. The six-winged guardian dragon's body immediately vanished as though it had been projected into the snake's eyes. In the next second, Zhouwen saw the notification of the six-winged guardian dragon's death. He hurriedly turned around and ran. However, he was still a little too late. The snake glanced at him before the phone's screen went black. What essence energy skill is that? Do you have to be so shameless? Even the mythical six-winged guardian dragon died from a glance. Are you not giving me a way out? Zhouwen was depressed. After entering the game again, Zhouwen tried a few more times. If the snake didn't have such an essence energy skill, he and the six-winged guardian dragon might have been able to put up a fight. However, every time the snake used that skill, he and the six-winged guardian dragon would be instantly killed. There was no way for them to retaliate. All Zhouwen could do was take the six-winged guardian dragon to another temple. The outcome was even worse. The dimensional creature that looked like a wolf and a tiger directly used its speed to kill the six-winged guardian dragon. The dimensional creature's speed far exceeded the six-winged guardian dragon's. Furthermore, its claws were almost indestructible. In just a few exchanges, the six-winged dragon's wings were torn off. Although it was also a mythical creature, the six-winged guardian dragon was clearly much weaker than the two. This also had something to do with the companion beast's incomplete skills. If it was a six-winged guardian dragon with complete skills, it should be able to last a little longer. If I can't kill these two fellows, can't I kill the weaker ones? Zhouwen took the six-winged guardian dragon to the underground sea, hoping to use the six-winged guardian dragon to torture the 9 black dragons that were pulling the carriage. Although they were both at the mythical stage, the black dragons were chained and their strength was greatly reduced. They were definitely not as strong as the six-winged guardian dragon. Zhouwen confidently brought the six-winged guardian dragon to the underground sea. He rode the dragon and headed for the sea, prepared to start a massacre. However, the moment they entered the sea and saw the 9 black dragons, the black dragons seemed to explode. The chains on their bodies automatically broke apart. Then, a tragic scene happened. The six-winged guardian dragon was like a lamb that had entered a pack of wolves. It was torn apart by the 9 ferocious black dragons. What's going on? They can break free of the chains without opening the carriage door? Zhouwen looked at the black game screen and felt extremely depressed. Zhouwen tried to head to the underground sea again. This time, he didn't summon the six-winged guardian dragon, and the 9 black dragons didn't break free of the chains. However, when Zhou summoned the six-winged guardian dragon, the 9 black dragons seemed to be injected with adrenaline. They broke free of the chains and ate the six-winged guardian dragon and the blood-colored avatar again. As a person, I should be more pragmatic. Zhou had yet to recover from his injuries and had lost a lot of blood. Now, he really didn't want to waste any more blood. He didn't dare take the six-winged guardian dragon to fight mythical creatures. Instead, he headed for Tiger Cage Pass. Chapter 484. In all of Tiger Cage Pass, the only dimensional creature Zhou hadn't killed was the Masked Man. The Masked Man had all sorts of primordial energy skills, and they were extremely bizarre. Although Zhou wasn't afraid, he couldn't kill him. Now that he had the help of the six-winged guardian dragon, Zhou felt that it was time to give it another try. Apart from Truth Listener, six-winged guardian dragon, Fire Furnace Queen, Demonic Neonate, Banana Fairy, and a few other commonly used companion beasts were summoned. The Tiger Cage demonized general was nothing. The six-winged guardian dragon's poisonous breath killed him. After entering the city, the Fire Furnace Queen released the fire of the furnace, turning the surroundings into a sea of fire. Any demon soldiers or demon generals that came would die. The Masked Man's turned beans into soldiers and paper cuts into generals were not of much use. They could not stop the Fire Furnace Queen, who was wreaking havoc everywhere. No matter how many of them came out, they were burned to death. The Fire Furnace Queen's combat strength could only be considered ordinary, but when it came to grinding low-level monsters, she was really good. She was an invincible existence. A few mythical pets weren't as useful as her. Thinking back to how pathetic he was when he entered the city and how he was trampling over the ancient city, Zhou felt that he was indeed improving. Under Zhou's command, the six-winged guardian dragon immediately charged at the Masked Man. It spewed out poisonous smoke, and the demonic flames on its body surged, burning the Masked Man to ashes. Unfortunately, it only burned a piece of yellow paper. The Masked Man appeared in another place. The six-winged guardian dragon roared as it charged over and killed the Masked Man again. However, it was still a piece of yellow paper. Although the Masked Man's level and strength were far inferior to the six-winged guardian dragon, his technique was just too profound. The six-winged guardian dragon failed to kill him after a few attacks. This guy's skills are so powerful. If he can get a skill, he'll really make a killing. Is the immortal rope more powerful, or is his yellow paper doppelganger more powerful? Although beans for soldiers and paper cutouts for generals are impressive, they don't seem to be of much use. It's fine against low-level monsters, but against high-level existences, it's basically useless, Zhou thought. The six-winged guardian dragon chased the Masked Man all over the city. When the six-winged guardian dragon spewed out its dragon breath again, it saw the strange man throw a rope into the air. A dark cloud appeared in the sky, and in a few steps, he pulled the rope into the cloud. The six-winged guardian dragon spat out a mouthful of demonic flames and dispersed the dark clouds, but the Masked Man was nowhere to be seen. The pair of dragon eyes scanned the city, but did not see the Masked Man. The six-winged guardian dragon was enraged as demonic flames erupted from its body, burning all the demonic soldiers and demonic generals around it to death. However, a demonic soldier leaped up from the demonic flames and flipped onto the city wall. His figure changed from a demonic soldier to a Masked Man. He held beans in one hand and paper cutouts in the other. He scattered them into the air, and immediately turned into demonic soldiers and demonic generals that filled the city. The six-winged guardian dragon rushed over and shattered the Masked Man, but it turned into yellow paper fragments. This skill is too sick. Even a mythical creature can't do a thing to him. Who is this fellow? Zhou was dumbfounded. Zhou had seen quite a number of dimensional creatures. Typically, high-level creatures could crush low-level creatures. This was the first time Zhou had seen an epic creature play with a mythical creature. How can I kill him? As Zhou was pondering over it, he saw the six-winged guardian dragon's 6 wings flap wildly, shooting out demonic flames that resembled saber beams. It swept away all the demonic soldiers and demonic generals in the city. The masked man had nowhere to hide and was forced out. He pulled the rope in a bid to escape into the dark clouds. Before he could enter the dark clouds, a purple beam of light suddenly flew over and severed the masked man's head along with the rope. Plop! The masked man's headless corpse fell to the ground with the rope. The purple light transformed into a flying sword and returned to the scabbard in demonic neonate's arms. However, Zhou soon realized that the corpse that had fallen to the ground had turned into a puppet, and at the center of the puppet's eyebrows, there was a red dot that looked like a drop of blood. Killed epic creature, elegant emperor avatar puppet. Discovered dimensional crystal. Zhou originally imagined that he had rejoiced for nothing, but he never expected to see a notification on his phone. A dimensional crystal dropped at the same time. Zhou saw that the dimensional crystal didn't have the shadow of the masked man, but there was the shadow of a spirit talisman. Although he found it odd, he was still overjoyed. Although it wasn't a companion egg, he was already very satisfied that an essence energy skill crystal dropped. I wonder which skill it is? Zhou picked up the essence energy skill crystal and wanted to absorb it. Life providence doesn't match. Unable to absorb. A notification popped up on his phone, leaving Zhou slightly taken aback. He knew that mythical skills required a life providence and life soul, but it was rare for an epic essence energy skill to have a life providence requirement. Zhou switched life providences in an attempt. The ancient sovereign life providence, 8 perfections wisdom, and Godfiend were useless. When Zhou switched to his Tao body, he finally absorbed the essence energy skill crystal. Strange energy surged out of the crystal and drilled into the blood-colored avatar's body. It opened up a new essence energy circulation channel in the blood-colored avatar's body. An indescribable coolness spread throughout Zhou body as strange information flowed into Zhou brain. Absorbed elegant emperor avatar puppet crystal. Attained epic essence energy skill substitute talisman. Zhou was delighted. Is this the elegant emperor's substitute technique? It should be the skill that allows the paper talisman to substitute death, right? With that skill, wouldn't I no longer have to be afraid of death? It's equivalent to having countless lives? After Zhou carefully studied the substitute talisman's information, the expression on his face turned odd. He had no choice. The substitute talisman was the paper talisman's substitute death skill. However, this skill wasn't as simple as it seemed. This was because it wasn't something that could be used immediately. He had to prepare the substitute talisman in advance so that he could use it in battle. This essence energy skill wasn't something that could be used at the last minute. It required a long period of preparation in advance, and the process was rather complicated. The only thing that comforted Zhou was that creating the substitute talisman required a large amount of essence energy. Thankfully, he had the slaughterer life soul, so he had almost infinite essence energy. He didn't have to worry about running out of essence energy. Zhou found the tools and planned on trying to create the substitute talisman. Creating a substitute talisman didn't necessarily require yellow paper, wood, stone, or metal. Even a tile could be used as the basic material for a substitute talisman. However, typically, jade and plants had the highest success rate when creating a substitute talisman. Zhou took an ordinary piece of paper. It was likely made of plant materials, so the success rate wasn't too low. Zhou focused and used the substitute talisman skill. He extended his finger and condensed his essence energy at his fingertip. He pressed it on the white paper and drew a strange rune. Chapter 485. However, before the talisman was completed, the paper shattered. It couldn't withstand the corrosion of the primordial energy. Zhou Wen's primordial energy was almost depleted after just drawing the talisman once without succeeding. The substitute talisman's expenditure on primordial energy was just too great. However, his Tao body recovered his primordial energy very quickly. Zhou Wen didn't have to worry about having insufficient primordial energy. However, it was a waste for him to fail to draw the substitute talisman. Ordinary paper didn't seem to work, so Zhou Wen found a wooden board. It was removed from a box and was a relatively common pine wood. However, before Zhou Wen could finish drawing the substitute talisman, the pine wood board couldn't withstand the primordial energy and shattered again. Zhou Wen steeled his heart and found a steel plate. He used his primordial energy to draw the talisman on it. This time, the steel plate didn't crack, but the primordial energy talisman he drew instantly dissipated. It was as though he had used gasoline to write on it. It quickly evaporated. From the looks of it, it's not a problem with the materials. There should be a certain probability that the substitute talisman can succeed. It's not something that can be used just by drawing it. Zhou Wen roughly understood the reason. Therefore, he continued using paper to try drawing the substitute talisman. After drawing dozens of them, none of them succeeded. The white paper was completely shattered. Isn't this success rate a little too low? If it were anyone else, their primordial energy recovery wouldn't be able to keep up. They might not even be able to draw so many substitute talismans in a day. They can't even succeed one in a day. This probability is almost comparable to winning the lottery. Zhou Wen was somewhat indignant as he continued drawing. However, he still didn't succeed after using up all the paper in the notebook. Zhou Wen was a little stubborn. He felt uncomfortable if he didn't succeed in drawing one. However, he couldn't find any more paper at home, so he left his dorm and planned on buying a few diaries from the supermarket. He didn't believe that he couldn't draw a substitute talisman. Just as he walked out of Four Seasons Garden, he saw Wang Lu returning. When she saw Zhou Wen, she blinked and said, "When did you come back? You didn't even tell me. You even got me to help you raise the antelope and chick. Aren't these two gluttons too much?" "I just came back. I didn't have the time to go," Zhou Wen said with a light cough. He had really forgotten about the two fellows. "You came back just in time. This is the food I bought for them. Help them take it back." Wang Lu handed the 2 bags she was carrying to Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen took a look and saw that the bag was filled with all sorts of snacks. Furthermore, they were all branded goods that weren't cheap. "Wang Lu, you don't have to feed them with these things. Just give them something to eat." Zhou Wen was somewhat speechless as he thought, "Does your family have a mine? Is there a need to be so extravagant to feed them? It's not good to abuse small animals, right?" Wang Lu said with a smile. After a while, Wang Lu said, "By the way, you came back just in time. Xianwen will have an event tomorrow. Come and join us." "What event?" Zhou Wen asked. Li Xian said that he wants to go to Mount Laojun to see the wordless monument, Wang Lu said. Go to Mount Laojun to see the wordless monument? Zhou Wen was somewhat surprised. They had been to Mount Laojun once in the past. After returning, Li Xian swore that he would never go to that godforsaken place again. Now, he was actually going to Mount Laojun to see the wordless monument. From the looks of it, Li Mabai's matter has dealt him a huge blow, Zhou Wen thought. Are you going? Wang Lu asked. Yes. Zhou Wen thought for a moment. Since Li Xian was determined to cultivate hard, he naturally had to support him. By the way, bring the antelope along when you go. Zhou Wen felt that this might be an opportunity to see if the antelope would return to Mount Laojun's golden peak by itself. When he arrived at Wang Lu's dorm, he saw the antelope lazily sleeping on the sofa. As for the chick, it was standing on the table, watching an entertainment program on TV. There were 2 other tables on the table. One plate had melon seeds, and the other plate had melon seed skins. It skillfully chewed on one melon seed and spat out the melon seed skins on the other plate. It was done in one smooth motion. Zhou broke out into a black sweat as he thought to himself, indeed, I can't leave my pet to a woman to raise. It's only been a few days, and it has already become like this. From the looks of it, I have to hand it to Li Xian to raise when I go out. Furthermore, Zhou realized that the two of them had actually gained weight. It wasn't that they had grown, but that they had really become fat. In the past, the chick was a small eagle with a streamlined body. Now it was as fat as a duck. It dragged itself as it walked. Zhou was really worried if it could still fly. No, I have to educate it well. It has to become an outstanding phoenix. Who the F***ck has ever seen a phoenix that looks like a fat duck? Zhou made up his mind to train it well in the future. From the looks of it, I should find a dimensional zone and let it train. Zhou stared at the chick as he considered which dimensional zone to take it to. The chick shivered for some reason as it moved its gaze away from the screen. When it saw Zhou, it immediately flapped its wings excitedly and flew over. Zhou spread his arms, wanting to hug it, but to his surprise, the fellow fell midway due to its fat body. It flapped its wings a few times before stabilizing its body. It didn't fall flat on its face. It left Zhou speechless. This fellow really doesn't know how to fly. Train. I have to train hard. Zhou secretly cursed inwardly. As for the antelope, Zhou didn't dare touch it and pretended not to see it. He returned to his dorm with the antelope and chick. The next morning, Zhou went to buy breakfast and sent it to Wang Lu. After waking up and eating, the two of them went to the Xianwen Club together. Basically everyone from the Xianwen Club was present. Even busy people like Gu Dian and Huang Ji were here. Feng Qiyan also brought Ming Xiu and Tian Jinjin, as well as Fang Ruoxi, Tian Xiangdong, and the other old members. The group took the school bus and headed for Mount Laojun. This was an activity that the Xianwen Club had applied for from the school. The driver and the tutor escorting them were from the school, so there was no need to worry too much about safety. Zhou wasn't worried about his safety. With the six-winged guardian dragon, there were only a handful of people in the Federation who could kill him. Even if he couldn't beat them, Zhou was confident that he could survive. The fat bird lay on Zhou's lap, and the antelope occupied 2 seats. They had been brought over by Zhou. After the group arrived at Mount Laojun, Zhou and Li Xian quickly arrived in front of Mount Laojun's wordless monument with familiarity. When they went up the mountain, they encountered a few people. It was unknown what they were doing, but they stopped in front of the wordless monument. It was as though they were here to look at the wordless monument. Elder June, your surname is June, and this is Mount Laojun. I think this is your blessed land, a middle-aged man said obsequiously to the old man beside him. Chapter 486. Zhou and company arrived in front of the wordless monument and prepared to look at it. Students, can you wait a while and look at the wordless monument later? The middle-aged man walked over and said. Why? Li Xian asked. This is our East District's Taoist expert, Elder Jun Tingyu. He's here to study the wordless monument. If you look at it now, you will be affected by the wordless monument's power. It will inevitably disrupt Elder Jun's research, the middle-aged man said. It's fine. Let them take a look first, Jun Tingyu said. Since Jun Tingyu had spoken, the middle-aged man didn't say anything else and returned to them. Zhou and company took out the things they had prepared before preparing to look at the wordless monument. This was because if one looked at the wordless monument for a long time, they would be affected by it. They would be like a person who was full of energy and couldn't stay idle. They would do things that required physical strength. Therefore, they had prepared some tools so that they could do what they wanted to do. For example, Tian Xiangdong had prepared 2 dumbbells. He wanted to lift the dumbbells later to expend his stamina. Tian Jinjin had prepared a yoga mat and planned on doing yoga. Apart from Gu Dian, everyone had prepared their own tools. When Jun Tingyu saw the things they had prepared, he seemed rather interested as he sized them up with a smile. Elder Jun, I heard that the power of the wordless monument can make people in a state of excitement. Then, can we use this excited state to study to improve our results? The middle-aged man, Li Mingcan, asked. Jun Tingyu smiled and said, That's a good idea, but it's very difficult to carry it out. Legend has it that Mount Laojun is the place where the ancestor of Taoism lived in seclusion, and his thoughts are mainly focused on the word Tao. The Tao follows nature, seeks the origins of all things, and obtains the great Tao of heaven and man. I don't fully understand the meaning and power of this wordless monument, but according to Mount Laojun's thoughts, it must be a power that pursues nature and returns to oneself. Elder Jun, can you say it in layman's terms? We still can't understand such profound meanings, Li Mingcan said. If I'm not wrong, the wordless monument should be able to trigger one's innate potential. Therefore, when it comes into play, humans will follow their hearts and do what they want to do in the depths of their hearts, casting aside the restrictions of the world. The things prepared in advance are only what people feel they should do, but what they really want to do in the depths of their hearts will not be affected by external factors. Therefore, what they do after viewing the wordless monument is often different from what they want to do now. Just like a student, he thinks that he should study hard, but that's only because he's in society. He thinks that he should do so because of external factors, but what he really wants to do isn't necessarily to study. Or rather, more than 95% of people don't want to study deep down, so even if he brings a book, he won't read it when the time comes. Is there no way to resolve this problem and use the power of the wordless monument on what you want to do? Li Mingcan asked again. In the beginning, when the influence is relatively low, you can still control it a little. However, after looking at it for a long time, the instinctive potential in your heart will be completely stimulated. It'll be very difficult to control it. Unless you're a saint or Buddha, no one will be able to control their instincts, Jun Tingyu said. As they spoke, Zhou Wen and company were already sitting in front of the wordless monument, staring at it. The longer one looked at the wordless monument, the greater the influence one would receive. However, it also depended on one's willpower. If one's willpower was stronger, then even if one looked at it for a long time, they would be less affected than the average person. However, this determination might not be a good thing. Instead, it might be an obstacle. Due to the influence of external factors, humans would do many things that went against their hearts. For example, many people felt that work was a burden and wished to go out without worries. However, due to various external factors, they had no choice but to restrain their impulses and do work that they didn't want to do. Furthermore, they had to think of ways to make themselves devote to work. If one's willpower was too strong, it was very likely that they would forget their instinctive pursuits and find it difficult to stimulate their innate potential. In that case, doesn't that mean that the things they prepared are completely useless? Li Mingcan said as he looked at the tools Li Xian and company had prepared. Unless his heart is the same as his current thoughts, it's indeed useless. Jun Tingyu spoke very conservatively. In fact, he believed that those things were basically useless. I originally wanted to bring books over so that I could learn more. Thankfully, I didn't, Li Mingcan said with a smile. Jun Tingyu said, Actually, it's not that you can't read, but you have to like it. From some of the actions after looking at the wordless monument, you can tell a person's future potential. For example, a person who subconsciously practices his fist after looking at the wordless monument will definitely have outstanding cultivation in his fist techniques in the future. If a person subconsciously practices his sword after looking at the wordless monument, then his sword techniques will definitely be excellent in the future. They had been chatting the entire time and didn't deliberately look at the wordless monument, so they were less affected. However, Zhou Wen and company had been looking at the wordless monument from a close distance. Tian Xiangdong, who had the weakest willpower, was quickly affected. After looking at it for a while, he couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up and ran in circles nearby. Elder June is right. He didn't use the things he brought. However, what kind of potential does his running in circles represent? Does it mean that he will be very proficient in alacrity techniques in the future? Li Mingqian asked. This isn't easy to interpret. You can interpret it this way. It's also a possibility. Jun Tingyu actually had another explanation, but he didn't say it out loud. Running could also be a form of psychological evasion. Zhou Wen looked at the wordless monument for a while. He originally hoped to see something. Perhaps it could improve his Tao body and condense a life soul. However, to his surprise, even if he circulated the essence energy art he obtained from the wordless monument, there was no reaction from the wordless monument. After looking at it for a while, he felt a little bored. He took out his phone and sat there to grind. Zhou Wen's actions immediately attracted the attention of Li Mingqian and company. Li Mingqian asked curiously, Elder June, that student actually started gaming after looking at the wordless monument. What does this mean? Jun Tingyu shook his head and said, although people naturally like to have fun, most people still have some pursuits in their subconscious. If he's completely addicted to games like this, his future achievements probably won't be too high. Or rather, his achievements will be in the gaming field. Jun Tingyu's words were already very tactful. In such an era, a student who was addicted to gaming clearly wouldn't have any achievements. Chapter 487. Zhou Wen naturally heard what they said, but he never cared about what others said, so he continued gaming and grinding dungeons. After the antelope arrived at Mount Laojun, it strolled around by itself. This made Zhou Wen secretly delighted, but he never expected Fat Bird to follow it. This left Zhou Wen somewhat depressed. Perhaps it was because they had been together for a long time, but the two of them were getting more and more familiar with each other. The bird and antelope seemed to be getting along well. After a while, the others also began to move. Tianjinjin didn't use the yoga mat she had taken. Instead, she practiced her sword technique. This was considered normal, but the next few people were somewhat abnormal. Huang Ji was the same as Zhou Wen. He took out his phone and began gaming crazily. Gu Dian took out a large pile of food from his backpack. They were basically all kinds of jerky and chicken drumsticks. He sat there and ate. Wang Lu prepared an easel and a brush and really began drawing. This time, Li Xian was completely different from the last time he came. The last time he came, he had crazily done push-up. When he returned, he couldn't even lift his arm for 2 days. However, this time, he sat there without doing anything. He closed his eyes as though he was resting. It was unknown what he was thinking. Elder June, look at them. Li Mingqian looked at Jun Tingyu, unsure what to say. Jun Tingyu shook his head and sighed. There's indeed something wrong with the potential of these students. They're either eating or gaming. Some even close their eyes to rest. If all the students in the Federation have such thoughts deep in their hearts, then I'm afraid the Federation won't have a future. Jun Tingyu was really worried about the future of the Federation. The Federation was already in a state of turmoil, but these young people were all so depraved. It was hard to imagine how the Federation would be able to support itself in the future with these young people who only thought about gaming, eating meat, and painting. Even though Li Mingqian didn't know much about the wordless monument, he could tell that gaming, eating meat, and painting were definitely not good displays of potential. Finally, the person who made Jun Tingyu's brows relax appeared. Ming Xiu stood up, took out the practice sword on his knees, and began to practice with it. The sword technique he practiced was the same as Tianjinjin's. In fact, Tianjinjin's sword technique was learned from him, so it was naturally identical. However, there was one difference. Ming Xiu did not completely practice the sword technique. He just kept drawing his sword and stabbing, repeatedly doing the same action. Elder June, What does this student mean by repeatedly drawing his sword? Li Mingqian finally saw a decent student and asked Jun Tingyu. Jun Tingyu praised and said, "Good, this student is really good. Elder Jun, please enlighten me. What's good about this student?" Li Mingqian followed Jun Tingyu's words. "Although it's only one move, I can tell that his foundation is very solid. He's as quiet as a virgin and as agile as a rabbit. His hand holding the sword is stable and powerful, and his sword thrust is accurate and fast. With such a foundation, he's still pursuing perfection. He's not satisfied with his own achievements, but he's also able to endure boredom and loneliness. This student's future achievements in sword arts will definitely be extraordinary. If nothing unexpected happens, he will definitely become a famous person in the sword Dao." Jun Tingyu wasn't stingy with his praise. Firstly, it was indeed because Ming Xiu was very outstanding. His praises weren't exaggerated. Secondly, after seeing Zhou Wen's repulsive students, he was simply amazed to see such an outstanding student like Ming Xiu. If our federation can have a few more young people like him, why would we have to worry about not being able to conquer a place to live in the future? The more Jun Tingyu looked at Ming Xiu, the more he liked him. He even wished that he was his student. He could nurture him carefully and make him useful to the Federation in the future. Li Mingqian also sighed. It looks like there are still talents in our Federation's younger generation. They aren't all people who only know how to eat, drink, and have fun. As they spoke, they saw Feng Qiuyan stand up as well. Then, he used his hand as a saber and began practicing his saber technique. Li Mingqian saw that Feng Qiuyan's moves were simple and not gorgeous, but they had a unique aura. He felt that this student was a little different. When Jun Tingyu saw Feng Qiuyan's saber techniques, his eyes lit up. He said excitedly, "Genius! What a genius, Elder Jun, what's wrong?" Li Mingqian was given a fright. Jun Tingyu usually had a sage-like demeanor, giving off the feeling that he was an otherworldly expert. He had followed him for so long, but he had never seen him lose his composure. Jun Tingyu stared at Feng Qiuyan without blinking, as though he was admiring a peerless treasure. This student has actually mastered such a saber technique at such a young age. He's simply a natural saber user. No, it should be said that he's a natural saber king. Jun Tingyu was a discerning person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to tell that Feng Qiuyan's saber techniques were good. Feng Qiuyan's saber techniques did indeed have the aura of a saber expert. In the future, he had a chance of becoming a grandmaster. How could Jun Tingyu not be surprised to see such saber techniques and saber aura from a teenager? The last time he saw such a saber technique was from a famous saber expert in the Federation. That person had already been famous for 20 to 30 years. His life was already on the decline, and it was impossible for him to improve further. As for Feng Qiuyan, he was like the rising sun. His future achievements were limitless. No one knew how far he could go in the future. It's too perfect. There's actually such a perfect genius in this world. This trip to Mount Laojun wasn't in vain. Mingqian, help me get his contact information later. By the way, there's also that student who practices swordsmanship. With such a genius young man, there's hope for the future of the Federation. Jun Tingyu couldn't calm his excitement. Right now, he just wanted to take these two talented young people under his wing. He wanted to find out which school they were from and which year they were in. If possible, he wanted to take them under his wing and teach them as his graduate students. He wanted them to study in the college he worked at. I'll go ask them now. Li Mingqian could naturally tell that Jun Tingyu really valued these two young men. He immediately prepared to go over. Don't disturb them. We'll go after they finish their practice. If we go over now, it'll inevitably interrupt their train of thought. It won't be good if it affects them. Jun Tingyu hurriedly held Li Mingqian back, preventing him from disturbing Feng Qiuyan and Mingxiu. Jun Tingyu watched from the side. The more he looked at them, the more he found them pleasing to the eye. The more he looked at them, the more he felt that they were promising talent. Then, he looked at the crooked melons and dates beside them. The 5 kilograms of jerky was almost finished by that glutton. He couldn't help but sigh. They're both students, but why is the difference so great? Chapter 488. Juntingyu was very patient. He found a place not far away and sat down. He watched Feng Qiuyan and Mingxiu practice. The more he watched, the more he liked it. Zhouwen was grinding the metalwork temple dungeon. He had already been to the cursed demon palace. With the 6-winged guardian dragon, he was no match for Medusa in the cursed demon palace. The main reason was that the palace was only that big. When Medusa's power swept out, there was too little space to dodge. He and the 6-winged guardian dragon could only clash head-on with Medusa. Medusa's terrifying eyes of petrification had petrified him and the 6-winged guardian dragon. Demonic neonate had nowhere to hide. It was very easy for her to die in the palace, preventing her from unleashing her true potential. Therefore, Zhouwen decided not to head to the cursed demon palace for the time being. He wanted to see what was deep in the music temple and the metalwork temple. Inside the training temple, Zhouwen summoned the Fire Furnace Queen, 6-winged guardian dragon, and the Providence goldfish. Then, he charged forward with the baby tiger. Inside the metalwork temple, the Providence goldfish's stats became +4 in luck. Occasionally it would fluctuate. Together with the lucky baby tiger's +5 in luck, a total of 9 luck wasn't a joke. The drop rate nearly doubled, making Zhouwen feel that the drop rate was especially high when grinding. The chances of dropping primordial energy skills and companion eggs were also much higher. However, Zhouwen wasn't interested in ordinary primordial energy skills and companion beasts. The companion egg that often appeared here was the legendary Steel Cauldron Fire Sprite. Although fire elemental companion beasts were not bad, with the Fire Furnace Queen, the Steel Cauldron Fire Sprite was naturally useless. Flame Cannon, Heavy Metal Fist, and Flame Protection Skill were the most common primordial energy skills that dropped here. It didn't take long for Zhouwen to learn them all and raise them to rank 9. However, the effects of these primordial energy skills were very ordinary. Zhouwen usually didn't use them. The Fire Furnace Queen was clearly a rare monster. After passing through several huge palaces and corridors, Zhouwen finally encountered one. Unfortunately, it only dropped a strength crystal after killing it. Further in, there were Steel Cauldron Fire Sprites, Hammer Metal Men, and other common dimensional creatures. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to see what was deep in the metalwork temple, Zhouwen couldn't be bothered to kill them. Buzz, buzz. When Zhouwen controlled the blood-colored avatar to come to a halt, he heard an extremely strange sound coming from inside. It sounded like the roar of machinery. Indeed, the moment the blood-colored avatar entered the hall, it saw a strange metal monster lying inside. It looked like a war chariot, somewhat similar to a tank, but its exterior was round. It looked like a small flying saucer with wheels. It was more than 3 meters tall and more than 5 meters in diameter. There were many holes around it. Upon seeing the blood-colored avatar enter, the strange war chariot began spinning. Flames spewed out from the holes around it. Due to the spinning, the war chariot was like a huge metal top that spewed fire. Bang! The 6-winged guardian dragon slapped down with its claws, smashing the strange chariot into a pile of scrap metal. Killed epic creature, blazing chariot. Discovered dimensional crystal. Realizing that it was a 38 valued primordial energy crystal, Zhouwen picked it up and held it in the blood-colored avatar's hand before continuing forward. Further in, there were more blazing chariot. After killing 20 to 30 blazing chariots, an blazing chariot companion egg drop. The blazing chariot stats were considered pretty good at the epic stage, but it was useless against Zhouwen. However, one of the blazing chariot's skills attracted Zhouwen's attention. The primordial energy skill was called Rampage. When the blazing chariot used this skill, it would be in a nearly invincible state, or rather, a domineering state. Even the six-winged guardian dragon couldn't smack it to death during that period of time. This skill is good, but the blazing chariot itself is too weak. I wonder if I can fuse Rampage with other pets. Zhou thought carefully and suddenly had an idea. Recently, he had been thinking of ways to obtain armor-type companion beasts. Ever since the mutated Stone Chi died, Zhou didn't have any decent armor-type companion beasts. The ordinary Chi armor's defense was too weak. It was useless in front of a mythical creature. It was like paper, unable to meet Zhou requirements. Since there aren't any ready-made armor-type companion beasts, can I fuse one myself? If I combine the life providence, life soul, and skills I need on one companion beast, perhaps I can create an armor-type companion beast that's stronger than the mutated Stone Chi? Let me think. The best life providence is the three-eyed golden warrior's golden body. That increases my defense greatly. I can also have the invincible golden skill. Which life soul should I use? Zhou silently calculated. It was clearly not enough to consider the life providence, life soul, and skills. This was because there was still the problem of compatibility. If the compatibility was too low, even if the two pets had the life providence and skills Zhou needed, it would be difficult for them to fuse successfully. Furthermore, after the two pets fused, their stats would change. They might not be able to retain the life soul or skills Zhou wanted. Therefore, it was almost impossible to fuse them once or twice. Zhou thought about all the pet stats he knew. Although there were a few good skills and life providences, he still felt that they weren't perfect. Furthermore, after giving it a try, he realized that the compatibility between some pets was too low. It was almost impossible for him to succeed after repeated fusion. Just as Zhou was fretting over this, a dimensional creature he had never seen before appeared deep in the metalwork temple. It was an armored warrior that was completely made of metal and looked like a heavy-armored warrior. The six-winged guardian dragon slapped down with its claws. Golden patterns appeared on the armored warrior's body that looked like it was made of pig iron. They were strange and beautiful. They appeared on the black-gray armor, making the originally ordinary armor look gorgeous and resplendent. Clang! The six-winged guardian dragon's claws struck the armored warrior's head, but it was blocked by its arms. The stone floor beneath its feet cracked, but the armored warrior remained unharmed. This fellow is interesting. Zhou eyes lit up. Clang! 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 The six-winged guardian dragon slammed down with its claws one after another, striking the armored warrior's arm heavily. It smashed the armored warrior into the ground like a nail. However, after suffering several heavy blows, the armor on the armored warrior's arm only had some fine cracks. It didn't shatter. Clang! It was another heavy blow. The shiny, lava-like patterns on the armored warrior's body shattered under the heavy blow. As the patterns shattered, the armor was also smashed into pieces. It was actually just an empty shell. There was no other creature inside. Killed epic creature, runic heavy-armored warrior. Discovered dimensional crystal. Chapter 489. This fellow is an epic creature. He can actually block a few consecutive attacks from the six-winged guardian dragon. His defense is pretty good, huh? What are the light patterns on his body? Skills? Life providence? Or is it a life soul? Zhou interest was piqued as he searched for such runic heavy-armored warriors in the metalwork temple. Fortunately, this kind of epic-grade runic heavy armor warrior was not rare, but it could only be found in the nearby area. Behind it was a public square, and there were quite a few runic heavy armor warriors in the public square. Further behind it was a strange building that was half embedded into the mountain wall. The building was completely made of metal, and it looked like half a huge metal ship was embedded in the mountain wall. Above the building, there was a metal statue holding a casting tool. It should be the god of forging. The runic heavy-armored warriors were the guards that guarded the temple nearby. Seeing that there was no other way, Zhou knew that the strange metal palace might be the end of the metalwork temple. He wasn't in a rush to enter as he searched for runic heavy-armored warriors to hunt. There were only about 100 runic heavy-armored warriors nearby, so it wasn't easy for a companion egg to drop. Zhou was already mentally prepared to grind a few more times, but with the augmentation of the baby tiger and the goldfish's luck, he managed to get a runic heavy-armored warrior companion egg to drop. Zhou hurriedly checked the stats of the runic heavy-armored warrior and was overjoyed. Runic heavy-armored warrior, epic life providence, heavy-armored warrior life soul, blessed combat rune strength, 36 speed, 29 constitution, 37 essence energy, 34 innate skills, fist of war, rampage, heart of fury companion form, heavy armor. From the looks of it, those magma-like patterns should be his life soul, divine blessings combat runes. Furthermore, he also has the rampage skill. I wonder if this fellow can fuse with the three-eyed golden warrior. If he can fuse with a golden body life providence and a divine blessings combat rune life soul companion beast, I wonder if its defense will increase greatly in its armor form? Zhou didn't have the three-eyed golden warrior, but ordinary golden warriors also had the golden body life providence. There was no need to use the three-eyed golden warrior. He placed the runic heavy-armored warrior companion egg and the golden warrior together and checked their compatibility. He realized that the compatibility was as high as 76. Without any hesitation, he chose to fuse them. With a bang, the companion egg and golden warrior were reduced to ashes. The fusion had failed. Zhou was immediately taken aback. He found it unbelievable that the fusion would fail with a compatibility of 76%. Furthermore, he had 2 lucky pets with him. From the looks of it, the goddess of luck will occasionally hit a ton, Zhou muttered to himself. Thankfully, golden warriors and runic heavy-armored warriors weren't rare. One was at the legendary stage, while the other was at the epic stage. They were relatively easy to grind. However, all the runic heavy-armored warriors here had been killed by Zhou. He needed to drip his blood to respawn them. Zhou didn't respawn immediately. Instead, he walked towards the metalwork hall. He wanted to see what was inside. The door to the metal hall was very heavy. Zhou controlled the blood-colored avatar to use all his strength to push open a crack in the door. A scarlet heat immediately swept out from the hall. It almost made an epic expert like Zhou feel like he couldn't withstand it. He felt like he was about to be roasted. He hurriedly used the inverse ancient sovereign life soul to feel much better. Then, he pushed open the metal door bit by bit and looked into the hall. There was a huge furnace in the hall. Above the furnace was a golden trident. It was indescribably gorgeous and noble, as though it was a divine item from the heavenly realm. Golden trident? Zhou had heard of such a weapon. Legend had it that Poseidon's weapon was Poseidon's trident. It was a divine weapon that controlled all the seas in the world. It had the power to destroy the world. Poseidon had relied on the power of Poseidon's trident to trigger a world-destroying flood in an attempt to vie with the goddess of wisdom for control of the land. There were all sorts of myths and legends regarding the origins of Poseidon's trident. One of them was that Poseidon's trident was a divine weapon forged by the god of forging. Of course, Zhou didn't know if this golden trident was Poseidon's trident. Furthermore, in the myths and legends of other religions, the trident represented Satan's weapon. As its shape was 1 long and 2 short, it was very similar to a certain characteristic. It was believed to be a symbol of evil. This was the palace of the god of forging, so it had nothing to do with Satan. Zhou felt that the former was more likely. Even if it wasn't Poseidon's trident, it was likely a pretty good weapon. Just as Zhou was thinking about it, he saw the golden trident emit an intense golden divine light. The flames in the furnace also rose crazily, turning the entire hall into a sea of fire. The flames were extremely terrifying. Even with Zhou Wen's physique, he couldn't withstand them. He was about to be burned to death by the flames. The baby tiger was in an even worse state. It died tragically in the flames and was burned to ashes. The goldfish and the fire furnace queen weren't afraid of the flames at all. Six-winged guardian dragon also seemed fine. They weren't afraid, but Zhou had no choice. With a thought, six-winged guardian dragon transformed into 6 flaming wings that appeared behind the blood-colored avatar. The flames on the dragon wings resisted the surrounding flames, making Zhou feel much better. The silver water snake was also summoned. It spewed out water to resist the surrounding flames, but unfortunately, its water flow was clearly a little weak. The moment it encountered the flames, it evaporated and was useless. Zhou was just about to try pulling out the golden trident when he suddenly saw the furnace shake. The golden trident flew out of the furnace and pointed at the blood-colored avatar. Boom! Golden light burst out from the trident like the sun, melting the entire hall in golden light. Zhou saw the entire screen filled with golden light. He couldn't see anything. When the phone screen recovered, it had already turned black. Clearly, the blood-colored avatar was dead. What the hell is this? Zhou was somewhat depressed. He had been instantly killed. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have made the 6-winged guardian dragon transform into dragon wings. With the 6-winged guardian dragon in front of him, he shouldn't have been instantly killed. Zhou was just about to drip his blood to respawn and enter the game again when he heard the few people who had been resting not far away walk towards them. He couldn't help but look up. Chapter 490. Ming Xiu stopped practicing first. The influence of the wordless monument had disappeared from his body. Just as Ming Xiu was about to look at the wordless monument again and continue practicing, he saw Jun Tingyu walk over with his men. "Classmate, can we have a chat?" Seeing that Ming Xiu had stopped practicing, Jun Tingyu walked over impatiently. "Hello, what's the matter?" Ming Xiu asked Jun Tingyu in puzzlement. Jun Tingyu looked at Li Mingcan because there were some things he couldn't say. However, if he didn't say them, it would be very difficult to move a talent like Ming Xiu. Of course, Li Mingcan understood what Jun Tingyu meant. He coughed lightly and said to Ming Xiu, "Student, how should I address you? Which school are you studying in?" "My name is Ming Xiu. I'm a freshman at Bright Prospects College. I'm now on an exchange at Sunset College." This wasn't a secret, so there was no need to hide it. Ming Xiu told the truth. "Only a freshman?" Jun Tingyu's eyes lit up. Ming Xiu was even more outstanding than he had imagined. He had originally thought that Ming Xiu was already a 3rd-year or even a 4th-year student. He hadn't expected him to still be a 1st-year student. He was even younger and more outstanding than he had imagined. Furthermore, when he heard that Ming Xiu was a student of Bright Prospects College and was only an exchange student at Sunset College, Jun Tingyu felt even more confident. If he was really a student of Sunset College, with Ming Xiu's excellence, he would definitely be heavily groomed. However, Bright Prospects College was much worse. It wasn't on the same level as Sunset College. As for the Imperial Capital College he was in, it was in no way inferior to Sunset College. Its ranking was even higher. As long as he gave enough bargaining chips and sincerity, he wasn't afraid that Ming Xiu wouldn't be tempted. Whether it was an exchange student at Sunset College or a graduate student at Imperial Capital College, any student with the ability to judge would know what to choose. "Student Ming Xiu, let me introduce you. This is Mr. Jun Tingyu Jun, a teacher at Imperial Capital College. He's also the honorary vice principal and is a famous Taoist expert." Li Mingcan listed a long list of titles. Even without those titles, just being a teacher at Imperial Capital College was enough to earn people's respect. "Ming Xiu, are you interested in studying at the Imperial Capital College? I happen to be lacking 2 graduate students. You can also apply for a bursary," Jun Tingyu interrupted Li Mingcan. Li Mingcan had gone overboard. Only then did Ming Xiu understand that the old man in front of him actually wanted to bring him to the Imperial Capital Academy to study. Sorry, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. Without any hesitation, Ming Xiu rejected Jun Tingyu. He didn't want to come to Sunset College, nor did he want to go to Imperial Capital College. Why? If you have any difficulties, you can tell me. I can think of a way to help you resolve them. Jun Tingyu was slightly taken aback. He did not expect Ming Xiu to reject him directly. There's no difficulty. However, I still wish to stay at Sunset College to study, Ming Xiu said. If I remember correctly, Bright Prospects College's exchange students will only study at Sunset College for 3 months, right? Aren't you going back to Bright Prospects College in 3 months? Jun Tingyu asked Ming Xiu. He suspected that he had remembered wrongly. That's right. I have less than a month left at Sunset College, Ming Xiu said with a nod. Then why aren't you willing to go to the Imperial Capital Academy? Jun Tingyu was even more confused. Because there are people here who can teach me things that I can't learn anywhere else, Ming Xiu said seriously. Jun Tingyu saw that Ming Xiu was serious and didn't seem like he was being perfunctory. After some thought, he said, Sunset College is indeed a very good school. It won't be much inferior to our Imperial Capital College. However, it might not be the case that the teaching standards here are better than the Imperial Capital College. In all of Sunset College's tutors, I, Jun Tingyu, only respect Leng Zongjing. Don't tell me your tutor is Leng Zongjing? No. Ming Xiu shook his head slightly. Then who's your tutor? Jun Tingyu asked again. It doesn't matter who my tutor is. This is because I want to stay at Sunset College to study. It's not because of my tutor, but because there's someone here. To me, he's the best coach. No one else can replace him. He taught me how to use a sword, Ming Xiu said. Oh, who is he? Jun Tingyu was somewhat interested. To be able to teach such an outstanding student like Ming Xiu, Jun Tingyu believed that he must be a highly respected tutor or a swordsman. It was possible that the school had given Ming Xiu special treatment. However, to his surprise, Ming Xiu turned his head and pointed in a direction. Then, he said, it's him. He's my coach. Jun Tingyu was somewhat surprised. He didn't expect the coach Ming Xiu mentioned to be here. However, when he looked in the direction of Ming Xiu's finger, he immediately revealed a shocked expression. This was because there was only one person in the direction Ming Xiu was pointing. It was Zhou, who was gaming. At that moment, Zhou had already re-entered the dungeon and continued playing his game. It looked like the battle was very intense. You said that the student who's gaming is your coach? Jun Tingyu thought that Ming Xiu had made a mistake. The person who could teach such a genius student was naturally a true expert. How could it be a student, and such a student at that? Yes, he's my coach. He was the one who taught me how to use a sword, so even if there's less than a month left, I hope to learn from him, Ming Xiu said very seriously. Jun Tingyu, Li Mingcan, and company gaped, speechless. From Ming Xiu's expression, it didn't seem like he was spouting nonsense. However, in order to learn from a student for a month, he actually gave up the opportunity to follow Jun Tingyu to the Imperial Capital College as a postgraduate student. This was simply incomprehensible to them. Student Ming Xiu, you should consider it again. Although that student might be outstanding, there's definitely a gap between him and a famous tutor like Elder Jun. You're too young, so you might not know much. Many of the students taught by Elder Jun are already famous epic experts in the Federation, Li Mingcan said. Jun Tingyu, a tutor of the Imperial Capital College, an honorary chancellor, and a famous Taoist scholar. He has the reputation of being a famous Taoist master. He has outstanding strength and has also taught Li Zijian, Zhang Huayu, and other famous epic experts in the Federation. He has nurtured no less than 30 epic experts for the Federation. Ming Xiu recounted Jun Tingyu's glorious deeds as though he was familiar with them. However, in the end, he bowed slightly to Jun Tingyu and said, "Thank you for your kind intentions. If it was before I came to Sunset College and didn't meet Coach, I wouldn't hesitate to agree to follow you to the Imperial Capital College. But now, even if it's only for a day, I hope to learn from Coach." Jun Tingyu and Li Mingcan were somewhat dumbfounded. They watched as Ming Xiu turned around and walked to the wordless monument. He sat down and continued looking at the monument. They were dumbfounded for a long time. Suddenly, they heard a saber hum that pierced into the clouds. They turned their heads and saw Feng Chuyen turn his palm into a saber and slash at the sky. He was like an azure dragon defying the heavens. His aura was terrifying, as though he was about to slice apart the heavens and earth. Life soul. He actually condensed a life soul. Heavens! How old is he? Jun Tingyu's body trembled as he stared at Feng Chuyen in disbelief. It was as though he had seen a ghost. Chapter 491. With the development of the times, all sorts of dimensional zones were developed. More and more geniuses appeared among humans, and the epic stage had a trend of becoming younger. However, even the geniuses of the 6 families had to be in their 20s or 30s before they had a chance to advance to the epic stage. Furthermore, they had to be extremely talented. The student in front of him, who was still in university, had already advanced to the epic stage and condensed a life soul. Even Jun Tingyu, who was used to seeing geniuses at Imperial Capital College, couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. This is a rare genius that only appears once in 100 years. I have to think of a way to take him in. I can't miss out on such a genius. Jun Tingyu only wanted to take Feng Chuyen in as his graduate student. Under the stimulation of the wordless monument's power, Feng Chuyen constantly practiced his saber and finally comprehended something. He felt like there was a burst of qi in his heart that he had no choice but to release. He could not help but erupt with his true strength and slash out that strike that could cleave the heavens. After he was done, Feng Chuyen's mood calmed down significantly. He retracted his palm and retracted his essence energy. "Hello, I'm Imperial Capital University's tutor, Jun Tingyu. What's your name?" This time, Jun Tingyu couldn't wait for Li Mingcan to introduce him. He impatiently walked over and handed a name card to Feng Chuyen. Feng Chuyen. Feng Chuyen looked at Jun Tingyu in puzzlement, not knowing why he was looking for him. "Student Feng Chuyen, are you willing to be my graduate student and study at Imperial Capital College with me? I can apply for the highest stipend for you. Furthermore, you can directly work and study in my laboratory and participate in the projects I'm researching. During this period, you can enjoy the treatment of a researcher. I'll also apply for all dimensional zones in Imperial Capital University for you." Jun Tingyu couldn't wait to throw out all his chips. He really wanted Feng Chuyen. It was easy to obtain an army of 1,000, but it was difficult to find a general. There were many humans who could cultivate, but very few people had the chance to reach the mythical stage. Many years had passed, but there were still only a handful of people who had the ability to reach the mythical stage. From Jun Tingyu's point of view, Feng Chuyen was very likely to reach the mythical stage. If he could receive his careful nurturing, he might become a legend in the Federation in the future. "Sorry, I have no plans of leaving Sunset College," Feng Chuyen said. After experiencing Ming Xiu's matter, Jun Tingyu's mental fortitude was much greater. He wasn't too agitated after being rejected. He asked Feng Chuyen, "Why did you reject it? Does Sunset College give you better treatment than me?" "I'm just a freshman at Sunset College. I don't have any special treatment, nor do I need any special treatment," Feng Chuyen said. "Another freshman." Jun Tingyu looked at Feng Chuyen with even more fervent eyes. This was a heaven-gifted talent. A freshman was only 16 or 17 years old. A 16 or 17-year-old epic was too shocking. Even the 6 families probably couldn't find many such geniuses. No, I have to think of a way to poach him from Sunset College. From the looks of it, he doesn't lack money. His background must be extraordinary. If his surname is Feng, could he be a disciple of the Feng clan? Jun Tingyu pondered for a moment before asking, although the surname Feng is the #1 surname in ancient times, there aren't many people with the surname Feng in modern times. There are 2 more famous families with the surname Feng. They are in the imperial capital and Sea Return. Which one are you from? Sea Return Feng family, Feng Chuyan answered. Jun Tingyu was overjoyed when he heard that. Old Master Feng Boren of the Sea Return Feng family is a good friend of mine. We have a good relationship. I also have some understanding of your Feng family's essence energy art. If you are willing to study at the Imperial Capital College with me, I can provide you with special wind elemental crystals that are enough for your cultivation. A special wind elemental crystal wasn't something that could be bought with money. It could only be obtained by hunting wind elemental dimensional creatures. However, wind elemental dimensional creatures were relatively rare, and the drop rate of wind elemental crystals was low. The Sea Return Feng family's essence energy art required a large number of wind elemental crystals to advance to a higher realm. As a result, the Feng family's wind elemental crystals were always insufficient. They had to spend a large amount of resources to purchase them at a high price, but even so, it still wasn't enough. It could be said that he had invested a lot by offering such a condition. Even Jun Tingyu himself felt the pinch. From his point of view, Feng Chuyan had no reason to refuse. Wind elemental crystals were just too important to the Feng family. Sorry, I don't plan on leaving Sunset College. Feng Chuyan didn't hesitate as he rejected him again. Jun Tingyu was somewhat surprised as he looked at Feng Chuyan and asked, "Can you tell me why you aren't willing to go to Imperial Capital College?" Li Mingcan and company also looked at Feng Chuyan. They couldn't figure out why Feng Chuyan would reject the offer. Any university student would probably follow Jun Tingyu to Imperial Capital College without any hesitation. Not to mention poaching a first-year student, it was more than enough to poach a famous researcher. Furthermore, Jun Tingyu was willing to take out his own wind elemental crystal. This was like a lottery that fell from the sky. They couldn't figure out why Feng Chuyan would reject it. Was he out of his mind? Feng Chuyan said matter-of-factly, "Because there's a coach here, but Imperial Capital College doesn't." Upon hearing the word coach, Jun Tingyu, Li Mingcan, and company's hearts skipped a beat as they thought, "No way?" Jun Tingyu's expression was extremely odd. He glanced at Zhou, who was gaming not far away, before looking at Feng Chuyan and asking, "Which coach are you talking about?" "He's over there." Feng Chuyan pointed at Zhou, who was gaming. Although they were mentally prepared, Jun Tingyu and company's expressions still changed when Feng Chuyan really pointed at Zhou. Jun Tingyu's emotions were extremely complicated as he looked at Zhou with a strange expression. Li Mingcan couldn't hold it in any longer and couldn't help but ask, "Feng Chuyan, you said that he's your mentor. Can you tell us who he is?" "His name is Zhou. Just like me, he's a first-year student at Sunset College," Feng Chuyan answered. Jun Tingyu's heart skipped a beat when he heard that. "Another first-year student?" Li Mingcan continued asking in puzzlement. "He's also a first-year. Can he be stronger than you?" Li Mingcan actually wanted to say, "What right does he have to be your coach?" However, he was still someone who cared about his reputation, so he was too embarrassed to say such words directly. However, in Li Mingcan's heart, Feng Chuyan was already an unprecedented genius. It was understandable if he had a mentor or a famous person as his coach, but they were both first-year students. That fellow who was addicted to gaming was actually Feng Chuyan and Mingxiu's coach. Li Mingcan felt that this was unbelievable. It was very likely that Feng Chuyan and Mingxiu were just brushing them off as an excuse for not wanting to go to Imperial Capital College. When Feng Chuyan heard Li Mingcan's doubts, he immediately said seriously, "Of course Coach is stronger than me. Compared to Coach, it's like the difference between heaven and earth. I'm far inferior to Coach. It's the fortune of my life to be able to cultivate with Coach." Jun Tingyu and Li Mingqian were dumbfounded when they heard that. They couldn't help but look at Zhou Wen, who was engrossed in the game. They really couldn't connect such a student with the image that Feng Qiuyan had described. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.